Well, good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so I'm calling the August 8th meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Welcome, everyone. Before we do our roll call, I'm just going to give you an overview. The Planning Commission is a body that's appointed by the Town Council to make decisions and or recommendations. Tonight we have some recommendations. With respect to development applications in the town of Los Gatos, in order to make our decisions, we look at ordinances, policies, staff recommendations. We listen to the testimony of people that have come tonight, so thank you for coming. The structure is, if you would like to speak, there's these little yellow cards that are in the back of the benches in the area by you. We'd ask you to fill one out before you come up, and we use this to compile our minutes so that we get your comments and your name in our record. So we'd appreciate if you do that. If you have an electronic device, may I please ask you to put it on silent because it does tend to be distracting if it goes off. So we'd appreciate that. With that, I'm going to ask Ms. Bailey to do our roll call.
Commissioner Sayoc? Here. Commissioner Bourgeois?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Talascore?
Here.
Vice Chair Erickson?
Here.
Chair Jensen?
Here.
And Commissioner Smith has an excused absence.
And would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on our agenda is the approval of our minutes from our last meeting of July 11th. Did everybody get a chance to read and review the minutes? And if so, is there a motion? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'll move to approve the minutes of July 11th, 2012 as is.
Is there a second? Commissioner Talascore?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Written communications, we do have two, and we're going to take a little break. One of them is pretty voluminous when we get to those items to look at them, and we have one on item 3, which is the Swanson Ford site, and one on item 2, which is the proposed restaurant at 40 North Santa Cruz Avenue. So we do have two desk items. We do not have any requested continuances tonight. Each planning commissioner also serves on subcommittees. We have several, the Historic Preservation, General Plan, North 40 Advisory Committee, and we use this time for members who serve on those committees to give us a report on what they've been doing. Has Historic Preservation Committee met? Commissioner Erickson.
So the Historic Preservation Committee met on Wednesday, July 25th, heard 3 items, all that had to do with proposed changes to the exterior of buildings in historic zones, one on Fairview Plaza, one on Broadway, and one on Loma Alta.
Thank you. Was there a Conceptual Development Advisory Committee meeting? I don't think so. General Plan, Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you. The General Plan Committee met earlier this evening. We had 2 items on our agenda. The first was a discussion of some changes to the BMP, our below market price housing ordinance. In the guidelines, they made some wording changes to resolve some confusions and conflicts, and that's going to be going to the council. Since it's not an ordinance or policy issue, it's not coming to Planning Commission. And then longer term, they're going to look at actually revising the ordinance itself. This was kind of a quick fix to remove some confusions. We recommended approval with a few minor wordsmithing items. And then secondly, the affordable housing overlay zones, we looked at the design guidelines. We've been spending a lot of time in that committee developing design guidelines for affordable housing zones in town. And we put the finishing touches on those, and those will be coming to Planning Commission and Town Council.
Thank you, Commissioner Bourgeois. And I just want to let those of you in the audience or maybe watching at home who are interested, the North 40 Advisory Committee is actually meeting a week from today, August 15th, at 6 o'clock here. So if you're interested in the North 40 plans, come or watch. The next thing we do is take some time for verbal communications. Verbal communications is a time where anyone who's here that would like to talk to us about any subject which is not on our agenda tonight. So if the item you want to talk about is on our regular agenda, you just do that when it's called. But if you have something that you'd like to talk about that's not on our agenda, you have 3 minutes to do that right now. Is there anybody that wants to talk to us? Okay, I don't see anyone. So we'll move to our first public hearing, which is 381 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's a subdivision application M-10-007. And what we're doing tonight is kind of unusual because we're not actually making a decision on the project. We're not making a decision on the subdivision. What we've done is there is a draft environmental impact report that's been distributed to those who are interested in it. And as part of the process in certifying or looking at an environmental impact report, we, the town, the deciding body, is required to take in public comments. We can do that by email, we can do that by mail, and we can do that here tonight. The Planning Commission won't ask you any questions. We won't take any action. It's just an opportunity for you to put your comments on the record so that they can be incorporated into any changes in the final EIR. So if there's anyone here, I don't have any cards. If there's anyone here that wants to talk to us or make comments on the draft EIR for 381 Pennsylvania Avenue subdivision, now's the time to do that.
Larry Arzi, 18,000 Overlook Road. I wasn't planning on speaking on this tonight, but off the top, I did read the EIR, and I disagree that the subdivision is not historical. That when you subdivide in the 1890s and you have a consistency of lot lines for 150 years, that's historical. When you ask for a change, you're upsetting the historical nature of the block on it. Insofar as the comments about the buildings across the street not making a historical district, I mean, that's silly. That's like saying that the old Chart House building is not historical because it has a shopping center building across the street from it. It is nonsense, and we all know that the payer gets influenced when he or listened to when he hires for an EIR. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arzi. Anybody else that wants to talk or make a comment about the draft EIR for the subdivision on Pennsylvania Avenue? Okay, I don't see anyone. What I'm going to ask is that a member of the staff please just make an announcement about how you can otherwise communicate comments during our comment period and when the comment period closes.
The comment period for this application or for the draft environmental impact report ends tomorrow at 5 p.m. So if you have any further comments, please direct them to planning staff as a whole.
And how would someone who wants to make a comment do that? Email address? Town
All
address?
staff emails are on the town website at www.lascatusca.gov.
Which brings us to item number 2. And as I warned you, I'm going to take a real quick break so we can read. We've received a number of letters, and I don't think we've all had a chance to look at that yet. We're just going to take a couple minutes to go through it. And please give me, commissioners, a high sign when you've gotten through. Thanks. we're ready. The way we go through our public hearings is, and let me tell you first that what we're doing tonight is, the Planning Commission is not the ultimate deciding body on this matter. This matter will go to the Town Council, no matter what the recommendation of the Planning Commission is. The Planning Commission simply makes a recommendation to the Town Council, so we are not ultimately deciding this. It'll be heard again. This is 40 North Santa Cruz Avenue, Suite A. It is conditional use permit U-12-007, and essentially it's asking to convert a part of the former Domus space into a restaurant. The way we will conduct the public hearing is I'll invite the applicant up. The applicant and any of the applicant's representatives have a cumulative 5 minutes to talk to us about the application. After that, I'll ask any members of the public that want to talk about the application to come up, and you have 3 minutes. After everyone has talked, then we will invite the applicant to come back up and make any comments based on what has been said or what they've heard. Of course, you always have the option not to say anything, but that's rare, but you do have that option. We'll first start with a report from the staff if there's something in particular you want to highlight or add to the materials that we've already received.
No, you have all the information in your staff report and the addendum and the desk item.
Are there any questions for staff before we start? Okay, seeing none, I would invite the applicant to come forward, and I don't have a card for us, so I'm hoping you're going to fill one out at some point. Oh, I do have a card. I'm sorry, I apologize. Come on up. Mr. Shelton.
Hi, how are you? Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to, oops, can you hear me okay? Is that better now? Is that all right? There we go, okay. Get closer to it. Name is Stephen Shelton. I'm one of the applicants, obviously, for this 40 North Santa Cruz location. My intent here tonight, obviously, is to discuss my plan for that spot and to discuss what my business opportunity will be. In that case, essentially a restaurant with a full liquor license that requires a CUP, of course. My argument for that is to bring something new and different to the town that isn't generally offered now into that location. Opportunity to have some outside seating, opportunity to do some sustainable, locally farmed food, an opportunity to bring a menu and service that is unusual in the town of Los Gatos. It'll be a weekly changing menu going into a very seasonal style of food, organic, sustainable. The building itself is going to be designed with the green intention, a LEED certified intention, solar panels to support the power, to do composting, all those things that entail being a green certified business that I believe the town wants to be a part of and is seeking to grow into as a business. So that is what I am proposing to bring to the town. That's my restaurant. What's the opportunity to bring something new and different and a community benefit to the town? People ask me every day, and I try to explain what that is, and it's kind of hard to put into words, but really what I want to say at this point is what I'm bringing is more than just a restaurant and a place that's serving alcohol. I am proposing to bring something unique and different to the town, to show the town, in a manner of speaking, that one can operate, whether it's a retail shop or a salon, or even in this case a restaurant with a full liquor license, that we can do it responsibly, that embraces the town's goals and unique balance of retail shops and salons and the restaurants, that bring a balance that brings an energy of community, brings an energy of uniqueness, brings an energy of people that want to come together and share the space. Retail shops aren't able to operate and offer that opportunity, I believe. So the comment about displacing retail, I understand it. I have a background in city planning. I understand the process. I understand we ought to have a balance. My argument is that this balance doesn't sway too far because there's only one spot out of the 5 new locations that are offered in that location. So at that moment, I will stop, and I want to turn it over to Jay. I think you want to mention something as well. Are you good? No? Okay. All right. So at that point, that's my story, essentially. I'm just a small town guy, wanted an opportunity. I've been working on for 20 plus years. I believe Los Gatos is a place to do it. On that side of the street, it's very few locations that offer that opportunity. This one does that. So that's why I'm here. Straight and simple.
Okay, let me see if there's questions for you. Any questions for Mr. Shelton? Nope. Thank you very much. We'll call you back if,
Not a problem.
after other people have spoken.
Thank you.
I have a card from Jim Showalter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Stefan's a great guy. Jimmy's a great guy. We've known them for a while. I know there's always a tendency when alcohol is going to be served that we're going to have another, wet T-shirt night and Jello shots or something. But the man is an artist. He is, he is in no way trying to open some place that's going to become a menace to the neighborhood. I have never once seen him serve an inebriated person. I've only ever seen him make sure that everybody has a quiet and convivial time at Chin Chin, which is where we go a couple nights a week. The other thing is, I just want to point out that Amazon has started collecting sales tax, and you may think that's completely from left field, but because they do that, they now can put a distribution center anywhere they want to. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's something that they've already told analysts they're going to do. So you will be able to order something from Amazon in the morning and get it 2 hours later. So a plan that's based on the idea that people will want to go downtown to buy something because they need that instant gratification, you might want to keep in mind that I think Amazon's going to hollow out retail even worse. And so what Stefan's trying to do is to provide another reason to go downtown, and I think we should support anything that draws more people downtown. Because I think retail is going to become increasingly hollowed out, and so that's not what I would place strong bets on for continued revenue in the town of Los Gatos.
Questions for Mr. Showalter? Not so fast. Nope. Okay, thank you. I see a lot of people. This is my last card on item number 2. Is there anyone that wants to speak about item number 2? If you do, now's your opportunity. You can actually talk. Well, the card will work itself around. You can just tell us who you are and say what you'd like to tell us.
My name's Tom Lawston. I want to let you know that I do support the concept of another small, locally owned restaurant. I think it's really a positive aspect of the community to have a restaurant that's actually operated and owned by a local. I think it'll contribute positively to a vibrant retail environment. I think restaurants are critical if you want to get people to shop. It brings people into town for other reasons, and then after dining, they may choose to shop. I would just urge you to give these 2 stand-up applicants the opportunity to operate a new unique restaurant opportunity here in town, and I think they will contribute positively to the community in the long run. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Lawston? Thank you, sir. Sandy Decker?
Good evening. I'm Sandy Decker, 45 Glen Ridge. I've read this over very carefully because I've lived in this town for 44 years, and I find it increasingly harder to enjoy it. And most of that's because it's becoming more and more inaccessible, and what I'm afraid of is it's becoming unsustainable. Mr. Shelton and Mr. Marino have some wonderfully supportive friends, as we saw with the letters in the packet. However, we really shouldn't, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, consider who this is. It's what it will do to our town. Without realizing Mr. Arzi was doing a count, I did one too, because I run into people all the time that can't believe we would even consider intensifying the block between Main and Bean. Main and Bean, between the two, have 15 food-serving businesses. Of according to Mr. Arzi. According to my count, they have 16. Food service business is one of the most intensive uses we have. Patrons and employees both need long-term parking places, which I think we will all agree are in very short supply and many times are non-existent. Please, planning commissioners, keep in mind the general planning policies that rule our town have a very, very, I think, open and honest policy, and it's very clear and very easy to understand. It's policy LU 9.2. When a proposed use displaces a retail place, when a proposed use displaces a retail space in the downtown commercial area, it is inconsistent with our general plan policy. Please be clear in your recommendation, because the town council must understand that you have really taken a good look at this by the time you make your recommendation, and that you make it strong so that you do represent those of us who are here to speak and those of us who are trying to find parking places and live within a town that's becoming very restaurant intensive. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Decker? Okay. I apologize in advance, Mr. Matulich?
Thank you for listening. My concerns are the fact that I am owner-operator of steamers. I've been in town for 32 years and have seen it grow over the period of time. I've been subjected to all the laws that this town has put forth as far as parking, planning, permits, and everything else, okay? I wasn't even given an application in 1979 to get a liquor license. I was denied even the right to ask for one, okay? But yet I was on the cover of Barron's Magazine, a financial paper that listed us as one of the top grossing restaurants in the United States. Times have changed, I agree to all that. But if you come downtown and listen to my customers complain that there's no parking available, and that seems to be a city parking lot, which everybody seems to think it is, but it isn't. I pay the tax on that to the owners of the building, federal. I pay for the common area maintenance of that. But yet my customers drive round and round. I lose a lot of business, okay? I don't know Mr. Shelton's background, and I'm not going to say any more of that as if he's a chef or not. But we've seen the last places open. We had started off with, well, let's say we got Randall's, Gardino's, Centonove, Valeriano's soon to open. A lot of our businesses right now are down percentage-wise, 30 plus, percent. And I'm talking over $1.5 million. The pie's only so big in such a small town. If you think you're going to go to the guidance of, Santana Row, we don't even have any near the facilities to accommodate that traffic. So without the proper parking, the proper previous use commit, I even looked at the project. And I was open to the idea until I did a little research, and I came down to planning, and I was told there'd be 17 seats. Now, if you think you can operate a restaurant at 17 seats and pay a rent in Los Gatos without being bar-oriented, because your profit margins are extremely higher in your bar, you're going to have a 60-40, 70-30. Whatever your product mix is, it's going to be leaned towards a bar. We've already gone through the guise of I'm going to open a restaurant with, no, it turns out to be a bar. Gardino's is a perfect example. It was supposed to be a small, service-oriented facility. If you go in there, his bar is bigger than mine. His bar stools, it's ridiculous. I think it's time we go back to what we had originally zoned these things for, and the council and planning should protect some of the people that have contributed to this town and protect some of our businesses. The more liquor licenses you give out, the less and less my business is worth. Before, that used to be a valuable asset in this town, because brokers would come to me, do you want to sell? And I said, no. I said, I've been here too long. I don't want to retire. And so they go, you have a liquor license? So I go, yeah. And they go, well, it's worth a lot of money. Well, over a period of time now, it's like, oh, no one even asks if I have a liquor license anymore when they call me. All they want to know. So.
That beeping means that your time is up, but you can wrap up, or if there's questions, you can answer those.
Follow the guidelines, of what the town was really intent down there. Because if you go from Willow Street to Gardino's to us to, back there, you've got what, how many, 12 or 13 facilities to, have a drink? And everybody's using organic produce.
Okay, let me see if there's any questions for you. Nope, thank you very much. Larry Arzi?
Because of this kind of intensification, I did what Mr. Matlich didn't do. I sold out. And I'm rich. Thank you very much for intensifying the central business district. Here we are again, pitting property owner against property owner, friend against friend, business against business, because we can't get our act together in this town. There is somewhere around 90 businesses on this one section of the street. This includes upstairs and ground floors. Including 2 upstairs restaurants, there are about 60 businesses facing the street. 28, or close to 50%, are CUP businesses. 50% are CUP businesses. 11 of those are national chain stores, 15 are restaurants, close to 25%. I can keep this up, but I think you get the point. This is incredible intensification for Los Gatos. It is not so much the granting of another restaurant usage, but the granting of another CUP that bothers me. It has become policy to eliminate small business retail uses in favor of nationals or restaurants. Beware. In the last year, 3 restaurants downtown went broke. You can only slice the pie so thin. If we keep adding restaurants, we will soon have to help them stay in business. We don't allow more than 20% nationals onto the street, but yet we allow 25% restaurants and 50% CUPs, which create more concern to safety and the health and welfare of that block than the national chain stores. The problem here is the continued granting of more CUPs. So I'd like to suggest, as we did with the national chain stores after that Little American Apparel problem, we placed a hold on all we place a hold on all CUPs downtown until we come up with a similar solution that we did with American Apparel of setting percentages of allowable CUPs. I have 3 buildings on this block that I am still financially involved in. Maybe I should quickly get a CUP for a restaurant. Art with cheese and wine. New concept. I truly believe that one more CUP will not help these tenants. This kind of intensification is one reason we closed the Los Gatos Porch. You cannot operate as a small retailer with these percentages, especially with a lack of infrastructure. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Arzi? Thank you. Those are all the cards I have from, okay. One more. Please just go ahead and give us your name.
Sure. Jason Farwell. I'm the managing member of Los Gatos Investments, LLC, who's the property owner at 40 North Santa Cruz. And, I can appreciate the comments that have come before me. We've been in town for a long time. Before this was even a building, it was a gas station. Could you imagine a gas station being downtown in that location? It was converted in '76 to the building that it is today, and then the Dutch Fox was in there, and Steamers was in there. And then as time went on, Domus came in and took over the whole space. Domus had a great run. But the unfortunate reality is that change is inevident in our town. The Los Gatos Market, remember that downtown on North Santa Cruz? Great, great business. Loved it. Went there all the time as a kid. Unfortunately, it didn't make it. Right? It's just part of reality. We invested over $750,000 into this building to make it nice again. And we think we've done a pretty good job. It's come a long way. We've devoted ourselves to finding non-formula tenants for the space, and that's what we're doing. And we've actually found, and I'm sure you can imagine, we received, upwards of 100 calls for a food use at that location. and we were really, really selective, and we knew we had one shot, and this is our best shot right here. And we think that they're a quality applicant. They got a great concept. We think they're going to be great for our town. Again, I can appreciate the fact that there's this concern with intensification in the downtown area. But the interesting thing is, if you walk downtown on an ordinary business day and you look on the west side of the street, you've got a lot of foot traffic. You look to the east side of the street where our building is, there's not a lot going on. There's only one real food use on that side of the street. I don't really consider Andalays a food use. It's more of a to-go. But you got Forbes Mill. That's it. I think by getting a food use into this corner here is going to create more foot traffic for that side of the street. And I think it's a legitimate argument. So, you know, we ask the Planning Commission to really consider this. There have been no questions, which I'm kind of, everybody's so quiet tonight. I'm a little kind of flabbergasted by it. It's unusual. But I look forward to hearing your comments. Obviously, we're going to go to council with this. But whatever direction you provide the council is going to be very, very important. And we respect your position. We hope that you see the value of this particular applicant and the use for this. And again, I also think CUPs are a legitimate control mechanism for the town. They shouldn't be frowned upon. They actually provide the town with the ability to provide feedback to the applicant and set restrictions. It's totally normal. And it's very
Mr.
common.
Farwell, your red light is on, so if you'll wrap up, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll wrap up. Thank you for your attention and time. Thanks.
Questions for Mr. Farwell? Nope, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak before I call back the applicant? Yes.
John Shepherdson, attorney, 59 North Santa Cruz Avenue. I really didn't plan on speaking about this topic tonight, but I just wanted to offer some information from my perspective and in terms of the proposal. I really don't have an opinion one way or another, other than to say that I have my law practice at 59 across the street, and around 11:30 or so, pretty much every day, that lot is full. And so that becomes a problem in terms of the parking. I don't know what the hours are going to be for the restaurant. So that's a concern I have. And the second thing is that that corner there, it's a one-way, and it's kind of a tricky corner, that lane there, and I'd be a little bit concerned in terms of if you have a large group of people that are drinking and they're coming out of that restaurant, crossing that street, or you know, either to the west or going north. So I just raised those concerns for the Planning Commission.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Shepherdson? Okay, last call before I call back the applicant. Okay, I don't see anyone. So, Mr. Shelton, you have 3 minutes to say whatever you'd like to say. You don't have to say anything if you don't want.
I'll take the opportunity. I'm not quite as nervous now. I'm more relaxed. You know, I got 3 minutes, right? I think Jay said it best, and I appreciate, again, I have a city planning background. I went to school for it, environmental planning. I get how towns work and the regulations and such, and I appreciate everyone's comments, from the Steamers owners to everyone's comments, and I get that. And I just want the Planning Commission to know that the reason I'm here is something that's in my blood. It's what I do for a living. It's what makes me tick every day. And for me to go through a year and a half of this to get to where I am today, it's because I care about what I do and what I bring to a town. So that's what I want the Planning Commission truly to understand. It's more than just the elephant in the room of having liquor and food. It's about providing something for people in this town that they enjoy doing on a regular basis. I think people have said that. And it's about bringing people together, and that's really what it's all about. It just so happens that my talent and my skills are serving the public via food, great service, great drinks, great atmosphere. That's my avenue. That's what I do, and that's what I want to bring to this town. And I believe I can do it. I will do it, and that's all I'm asking for is a chance to do that. And I think even to people who are against that, I want them to know that I'm not just your everyday guy bringing in a restaurant, another chain restaurant. I'm a very small guy. I don't have a lot of money, but I have a dream to bring something into this town and prove that there is a way to do a restaurant, do it responsibly with liquor. It's not just a place to go and party. It's a place for mature adults to have another option to go to. That's one thing I think is missing in this town is an option for mature adults. I don't want to use ages because, but the 30-somethings or above to have a place, an option to go to versus having an option at 11 o'clock at night to have to go to Los Gatos Bar and Grill with 35 TVs and loud music. I want a place for people to have a great conversation and get together and enjoy conversation, great drinks and great food. So I just want to reiterate that. So thank you for your time, and thank you for letting me be here.
See if there's any questions for you. Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. I'll break the silence here. So, I think you have a great idea and concept here. It looks like a place I would probably enjoy going to. I'm all for increasing outdoor seating in downtown Los Gatos. I think it adds a vibrancy to the downtown that I really like. But I hope you understand that this isn't necessarily just about you and this proposal. This is about the land use for that property moving forward after you're gone. And so that's what the context in which we're evaluating this. And we have very clear guidance. What's giving me the primary pause is Ordinance 2021, which I'm sure you're aware of. It says discourage the displacement of retail uses by restaurant uses. And so what we do is we weigh evidence when we hear proposals like this. And so I just wanted to give you another opportunity, because I was listening very carefully to your opening comments, and I didn't quite hear it articulated very clearly. So I just wanted to give you another chance, because this is the evidence we're taking into weigh to make our decision. What is it about your place that makes it okay for us to approve it in light of the language that we have in our ordinance? So I just wanted to give you that opportunity to comment on that.
I think really what Jay touched on, I mean, we're going to a space where actually the town is gaining retail spots. And there was one spot, now there's 5 spots, correct? Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry, 4 spots at retail versus the 1 spot. And Jay and Sue created a spot where the idea was to have more retail spots and a restaurant to create an energy on that side of the street that will benefit other retail shops as well. So that my argument, I guess, if you want to use that word, argument or debate or retort, will be that we're still maintaining that town goal of 20% or the mix of 80-20, right? So we're 1 spot out of 5. That would be a restaurant. And I will say that also that whether it's a retail spot or a restaurant, I think parking will be an issue regardless, in my opinion. So,
okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Shelton.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing, and now what we're going to do as the Planning Commission is consider what we'd like to do. And first I'll ask if there's anyone who has a question for staff. Commissioner Talasfor.
We didn't have anything in our staff report that indicated this, so I'm going to ask the question, and that is, do we have any kind of a percentage for balance of retail and, what is the mix that the general plan puts out, or help me out with this. There was nothing provided to us, so I don't even know if there is a mix that we're looking for. Is there a percentage cutoff?
No, there's nothing in writing.
Okay. So perhaps, yes.
Just for clarification, the only guidance that the commission has is that there is a percentage that the council has established for national chain stores retail versus
Yes.
but not necessarily for restaurant versus retail.
Right, and we probably have not done any research into that ever, have we? Maybe. What I'm going to suggest is that perhaps we do some research into what would be the an ideal mix and what makes it downtown vibrant and what doesn't. We need some kind of research and analysis. It's unfair to be putting this on applicants, and also us that we don't have enough information at this point. I mean, I have what I'm going to, do here by what we're dictated to from the general plan and our ordinances, but it would just help, I think, in our understanding and our decision-making.
This, too, will be directed to staff of your choice. From what I can see, the policy, LU 9.2, doesn't deal with statistics. It deals with the change of a retail use to a restaurant use. So it wouldn't make any difference what the statistics were. That is the policy. Insofar as studying downtown, that's not really the Planning Commission's job, at least that's my understanding. We are here to implement the policies, as I understand it, of the state, so of the city. So I guess going back, what is the relevance under that policy of any statistics? Is this something we can sit around and decide we can look at statistics and then override the policy? So I guess that's a question of council.
The policy would still stand unless the council directed that a study be done, and then we would look at how that relates to the policy and if there needs to be a general plan amendment regarding that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? I don't see any, so I am going to look to the Planning Commission for a motion, if possible. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I will make a motion that we deny the project because it conflicts with Ordinance 2021, and we would recommend denial of the application to the Town Council. And in support of that, I would say that I am not looking at the particular applicant. I'm looking at the proposed use. And if that policy is to mean anything, I think we would have to recommend denial. So that is my motion.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bourgeois. Are there any comments or questions regarding the motion? Commissioner Erickson.
We need to be very respectful of both the ordinance and the general plan. When I read the ordinance, if I can quote from the staff report, it says that Ordinance 2021 is intended to discourage the displacement of retail uses by restaurant uses. I won't finish it out. So the word uses could be interpreted as counting the number of businesses. It could also be interpreted potentially as counting the square footage of use. So I would like to compliment the property owners for taking a space which had a single retail use and creating the opportunity for several small retail uses in the space, which I think they've achieved by providing an opportunity where we are, as a town, trying to encourage small, locally owned businesses. So the property owner clearly has changed the property consistent with what the underlying intent of the general plan and the direction for the central business district. It's not clear to me whether we are supposed to make the judgment on the basis of square footage or number of uses. If we're supposed to make the judgment on the basis of number of uses, effectively this proposal and the way the property has been transformed by the property owner would increase the number of retail uses in the town. It's not clear to me what the direction from the town is, given what the town council is, given however that absence of clear direction from the town council. I'll be supporting the motion.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just one thing I'd like to put in the record for the council to consider. The applicant here, the property owner, had a single use there, which was retail. The applicant chose to split that single retail into 5 spaces. If our policy is to allow property owners to split up their property and then bootstrap that argument by saying, well, it used to be 1, now it's 3, and therefore I only want 1/3 of it to be restaurants. I don't think that's a long-term successful policy. So here we had 1 use, Domus. Now we have 4, which apparently are retail, 1 which is retail unless we change it. This is not meant as a hardship for the property owner or the applicant. But I think whoever said about Amazon, I think it's absolutely correct that maybe the town needs to look at what's happening. But fortunately, that's really not our job. That's the town council's.
Other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, we have a motion in front of us made by Commissioner O'Donnell to recommend denial of conditional use permit application U-12-007, seconded by Commissioner Bourgeois. All in favor, say aye. Aye. If opposed? Passes unanimously. And it will be heard by the town council. And I don't know if we have a date. We'll notice that. Is that correct?
Yes, that'll be noticed.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to item number 3, which is 16005 Los Gatos Boulevard, architecture and site application S-12-042 through S-12-059. We did have a desk item on this, which is just a sheet with pictures of materials and light fixtures. Did everybody get a chance to look at that? So we're not going to take a break for that. We can ask the applicant when he comes up. What I have asked Ms. Bailey, and I hope Ms. Avila is going to do, is to give us a very, very explicit recitation of exactly what the Planning Commission is allowed to do with this and what the Planning Commission is not allowed to do with this. This is a plan development. We have a plan development ordinance that's been voted on and approved by the Town Council, which has allowed certain uses on the property at certain densities. And what it's come back to the Planning Commission for is an architecture and site review. And so what, in particular, I think we're interested in is what's our discretion to review? Can we look at, for example, the circulation and roads? Can we look at the location of the open space? What is it that we get to look at, and what is it that we don't get to look at?
The PD ordinance has approved the density, as you mentioned, up to 30,790 square feet of commercial space and 25 residences, inclusive of 3 BMP units. Generally, the building size and location has been set by the PD, and we generally don't want to reduce any setbacks that have been established by the PD. The purview of the architecture and site application, you're looking at architecture, landscaping, lighting, fencing, all those details. And then there were a number of conditions in the PD ordinance which are all called out in the staff report that had to be addressed with the architecture and site application, inclusive of the sign details. So that's why you have a draft sign program attached to your report. There were some other things, including the doors for the trash areas, a few things that were specifically called out to be looked at with architecture and site approval. So those are all outlined in the staff report. There's also an item on demolition, because the ordinance specifies that demolition is to occur within 30 days of approval of the ANS application.
So I didn't hear you address the road design, circulation, or the location and design of the open space. Is that set by the tentative map that's been approved already by the Development Review Committee, or is that something the Planning Commission gets to discuss, or are we precluded from doing that based on?
Yes, you're correct. The lots have been established by the approval of the tentative map. The circulation can't really be changed significantly. I can let the engineer speak to that perhaps, but I don't think we'd want to do anything drastically different with where the driveways are, for example. And the open space area, that park, certainly is under your purview. If you would like it designed differently, absolutely, that's part of this process.
Okay, so
But I don't think
sorry
we
for
could-
monopolizing, and I'm going to ask people if they want to follow up, but the open space, so when you say, do we want to design differently, does that mean we want a different type of bench, or do we want can we distribute the open space differently, or are we limited to the space that's been created in the map that we have in front of us?
I think it would be very difficult to distribute it differently given how the property's been subdivided, but you could certainly change the way the park area has been designed. The landscape could be done in a different manner. If there's a concern about screening, for example, we can change elements of the landscape design. But I don't think that the park could be broken up and distributed throughout the project, for example, because I think that would create, I don't think it would work with the roadway system that's already set and the building locations, et cetera.
Okay, and I'm sorry to belabor this, but I just want to make it really clear. So what you're indicating is that the thing the Planning Commission gets to look at tonight is the architectural design of the buildings and the landscaping and nothing else.
Lighting, fencing.
Lighting,
All the site-
fencing,
the site
trash,
details.
trash door, but not road circulation, density, anything. That's been set
That's
by the
already
town
been set
council.
by the PD.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I think I just want to drive a nail into what you just said, because I think I do understand it, but one of the comments I think the town architect made, if I recall correctly, was the location of Building 2 with relationship to the exit there and the problems that might cause. But you're telling us Building 2 is where Building 2 is, and that's been approved, and we don't, that's gone.
The applicant has worked through all those issues with the consulting architect and staff. They did make some modifications to the circulation. There's some stop signs were added, for example, because there was a concern about safety. I don't think that the driveway is going to change in terms of its location. And the engineer may want to comment on that further.
Well, I'm not asking so much a substantive question, I'm asking a procedural question. I don't want to revisit something we can't do anything about. So if we thought, as was suggested, that because of the location of Building 2, it's causing a problem on Placer Oaks, it would be too late to raise that issue? Is that what you're saying?
Commissioner O'Donnell, maybe it would help if you refer to the exhibit from Mr. Cannon. I guess I know that we have that part of our packet.
This is A1.0? Oh, and Cannon, I'll go to Cannon's report.
Yeah, the concerns raised regarding the circulation, I think it's Exhibit 7. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I might also say in passing, which maybe we should get into now, there are a number of comments on that in that Exhibit 7 that I don't see responded to or changed or anything else. But I just wanted to start with where the chair had gone, because it's going to be a much shorter evening if we're so severely limited. Let me find that.
I have it actually in front of me. It's Exhibit 7. So, Mr. Cannon.
Yeah, I'm looking at 3 and 7.
Right. We have comments that he indicated that he has a problem with the placement of Building 2, with parking between Los Gatos Boulevards in conflict with the town's commercial design guidelines. He also talks about in paragraph that's number 2, potential circulation conflicts, and in number 3, walking in the parking lot as a potential public safety hazard. Are you telling us that those have been addressed by the staff, or are those something that we get to discuss tonight?
I believe those things were resolved through discussions with the civil engineer, the consulting architect, and the project architect. And I think the project architect will probably speak to that when they come up to present tonight.
Could I follow up on that?
Yes, please.
We've got the letter, which is Exhibit 7, raises a number of issues. We have the staff report, which just kind of blows right past that. As far as the record now reflects, the changes either were made or not by looking at the documents, and they weren't made. If you look at comment 1 of that letter, where it says 5824 parking lot should be located behind or to the side of the buildings facing Los Gatos Boulevard wherever possible. And he notes that's not what's happening here. And then he says, which is a classic, I feel that this location is acceptable. However, one consequence of the move is the parking lot next exit to Placer Oaks is very close to the Los Gatos Boulevard intersection and could result in some circulation conflict. So if he's not acting as a professional, but he's telling us how he feels, I guess I'm wondering what is the scope of our ability. Normally, the town council has told us to pay attention to the town architect. But when I get into language like I feel like, notwithstanding what the rules are, it's okay here because the people across the street did the same thing. I don't feel we're bound by that comment.
You could potentially change the footprint of the commercial building if you felt it was appropriate to do that. That is within your purview.
And he also makes a comment on the other side of the lot, which is a more significant comment when he says people going in and out of Blossom Hill Road may really cause a problem, and that is in the same letter. I don't see that responded to at all. So, I mean, the letter itself, in large measure, has not been responded to, and if you think it has, I would like to have somebody from staff show me where the responses are.
We're suggesting, we'd like to talk, but have the applicant do a presentation, and we'll work with engineering.
Thank you.
Well, just can I follow up on that a little bit? It's hard for us to listen to a presentation if we don't know what we're listening for. If we have no ability to address these, then it certainly changes how we listen or how we ask questions. If we have no ability, I think we'd like to know why we don't and how these have been addressed. And in particular, we'd like to know if it's being suggested to us by staff that the design, for example, it complies with the commercial design guidelines, and this letter is suggesting to us that it doesn't. How's that been resolved, and why aren't we being a part of that analysis is what we'd like to know. So I think we'd like to, if I get a little hand raise, I think we'd like to know that before we hear a presentation so that we know what we're listening for. Okay? So can we could take a break if you need to do that.
The circulation items, I would defer to the project engineer and the town's engineer as opposed to the architect, because I think that when you're talking about circulation and safety, that is an engineering function, and he can comment on it in terms of architectural related things, but I don't think it's necessarily the architect's job to say something's going to be unsafe or it isn't unsafe. I think that's beyond his area of expertise. So I would like to hear what the project engineer has to say on the traffic circulation, because they did discuss this, and we felt it was resolved, and perhaps the mistake we made was in not having the architect write us a follow-up letter saying that these things were addressed. So we had a lot of email going back and forth between staff, the architect, all those things. So that's why I said in the staff report that we did go through all of these issues. We did discuss all these issues. We felt we resolved them through modifications to the plans, but we didn't have the architect update his letter to reflect that.
Could I ask the chair?
Yes.
Would you then tell us how you resolved that comment? If you look at the second comment on his letter, it relates, whether he's an expert or not, it relates to a traffic issue. So you're telling us, I believe, that the staff who were experts, or who are experts, responded to that. That hasn't been shared with us, and I see no such change on the plans.
The parking?
No, the access.
The access. We did not, I don't believe that the determination was made, and I'd like to hear what our engineer has to say about that, but I don't think staff felt that that access was an unsafe design.
So on 2, when it says the bottleneck could result in traffic backing up onto Blossom Hill Road as shown on the retail center plan comments diagram, you decided, or somebody decided that they could just ignore that?
The engineers felt that that was appropriate the way it was designed.
So we got to ask the engineer about that.
Okay, I'm going to use chair's prerogative to go out of order on our normal process for hearings, and I'm just going to ask the engineer to come up and take the podium, and give us a presentation of what was done with respect to the circulation, how it was resolved, and what we get to do. And Ms. Prob, if you want to tell us what we get to do after he's done, we'd appreciate that too, I think. So can we ask the engineer to come to the podium, please? Or he's okay, staff, he can sit there. I think he's ready. Would you introduce yourself, please, and give us a little presentation and hopefully answer our questions?
Good evening. Mazir Bozerginia, Associate Civil Engineer. Just wanted to comment that this project did go through a traffic study, amended traffic study as well, with some different configurations for the site. And these ingress and egresses were reviewed at that time. There was a potential for backup on Placer for the ingress egress at Placer Oaks Road. Therefore, one of the offsite improvements is to construct a median curb there so that it would restrict the left turn movement. And that there was no issues. There was no issues at the Blossom Hill Road at the time of the review.
Did you discuss this with Mr. Cannon? How were the comments that Mr. Cannon makes in our Exhibit 7 resolved?
I apologize because I did not see Mr. Cannon's comments before this packet, so I did not have an opportunity to review them beforehand.
So okay. Commissioner Hausfor.
So are you telling us that you haven't had a chance to study this problematic area that was identified by Mr. Cannon?
What I'm stating is that we've reviewed this project site circulation, ingress egress with the traffic study, and at that time there was no issues found with the configuration of the slot.
Was that prior to this letter from Mr.
Yes.
Cannon?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so to answer my question, you haven't re-reviewed this perhaps problematic area since this letter?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Ms. Prop. We've had identified in our staff report, Exhibit 7, a letter from our town architect, which is raising a lot of concerns. Our town engineer is telling us that he's only seen it tonight. I'm wondering if it's appropriate for us to continue this item so that it can be properly studied.
So just to respond to Commissioner O'Donnell's questions and the questions of the commission, is the town architect is, the purview of the town architect is to comment on the architecture and the site design related to the ARC and site application that's before you tonight. And those are within your purview to discuss. The fact that he's asked questions about or raised issues about traffic would not have been something the town architect does not. It's not in his assignment to review the traffic studies that have been done. The architect doesn't usually meet with the town engineers or the project engineers. In a perfect world, I think that we all agree, based on the questions that are before the commission tonight, is that perhaps if staff had circled back with the town architect, perhaps if they had clarified that in the staff report, that certainly would give the commission a better comfort or responses. It's my understanding that there were traffic studies done, that they have been studied by the town engineers, and the town has its own traffic engineer, and so that would not be an area of expertise for the architect. It's merely raising questions. That being said, I would recommend that the Planning Commission proceed with the process tonight, hear the staff report, ask your questions, allow the applicant to make a presentation, and then if you feel that your questions have not been adequately responded to or your concerns addressed, then that may be the opportunity that if it's the Planning Commission's desire to request a continuance for further information, then that certainly would be in the Planning Commission's purview. But we would recommend at this point to proceed with the hearing to determine whether or not your questions can be responded by the parties that are present here tonight.
Well, let me ask you a question. The difficulty with that is that we rely on the staff report for information regarding the project. We rely on the facts that are presented to us to have an intelligent hearing and listen to people intelligently and know what we're supposed to do. And we've been told tonight that we have an exhibit to our staff report from our town architect. I know he normally does architecture, but his entire exhibit is about circulation, except for the last paragraph. And it seems like you're asking us sort of to ignore it and assume that the architect would have said, yeah, it's all fine, but we have an engineer who hasn't even seen it before tonight. So my difficulty with your recommendation, I'd love to hear what you have to say, is that it's very hard to go forward on assumptions and then basically saying, well, the architect doesn't really get to talk about circulation. So if you say to us, for example, circulation is not in your purview, you can't talk about that. All you can talk about is the paint color. That's a different thing. If you're going to tell us that we can talk about circulation and we should just consider it, then I have difficulty, and I don't know what other people can certainly weigh in going forward with the whole presentation, only to get to the point where we say, we really should have had this addressed. So I'm just unclear about the value of us going forward without knowing what the resolution of this is.
Part of the PD process would have been the traffic studies, the circulation proposal, and that would have been reviewed by town staff and covered as part of the process. So generally, that would already have been determined. However, that doesn't mean that because this is before you, that you can't ask those questions. And what the town associate engineer indicated tonight is that while he hadn't addressed or seen the questions from Mr. Cannon, certainly the engineering department, it's our understanding, and they can speak for themselves, is thoroughly reviewed this project as well as the circulation element and can address those questions should the Planning Commission have those questions tonight specific to these issues and can address them during the hearing process, even if they haven't seen the comments before tonight. But again, it isn't in the architect's expertise that while they can ask the questions, they can't make that determination that says there is a problem with the circulation. It's based on their feelings or their experience. They've got questions about it that they then defer to staff to look at. Then if you're not satisfied that staff or the applicant can answer all of those questions this evening, then that would be grounds for you to ask staff to return with more complete information.
I'm very interested in the comments or questions of other commissioners. Commissioner O'Donnell.
With all due respect, and I understand what council has said, part of my difficulty is that when you look at Exhibit 7, whether it's really funny. We've been told by the council to pay attention to the town architect, and now we're getting distinctions. Now we're getting, but you don't have to pay attention to him if we decide that really he's outside his area of expertise. But the staff report kind of glosses over that. It doesn't say anything about that except, oh, yeah, we worked it all out. So then we say, well, how did you work this out? And we say, well, golly, they must have worked that out in the past when they did their traffic studies. Now, no matter whether his expertise is this or not, if somebody says that entrance and exit on Blossom Hill looks like it could be a real problem, I guess it triggers in some of our minds that, yeah, I mean, that really is common sense and it looks like it. So if our staff has looked at that and figured out, hey, notwithstanding common sense, it's going to work fine, then we would expect to hear that. And secondly, when we talk about Placer Oaks Road. Same question, because when this started, when this conversation started, was what do we have jurisdiction over tonight? What should we be doing? I think I just heard that the location of Building 2 is not sacrosanct. If that's the case, the scope here is really big. And I don't care whether Cannon has expertise in traffic or not. What he said about some of these things just raised real questions that have not been answered. So if what you're suggesting is, notwithstanding that the staff has not addressed those subjects for us, we should listen to all this, not knowing what the staff's position is, and then close the public hearing, and what? Give the staff a chance to go home and respond to this? I'm confused. I'm all for the efficiency of moving forward, and I'm perfectly happy to listen to the applicant. I feel bad for the applicant, too, because if you read the staff report, you wouldn't think that Cannon's letter would be an issue. So it's like the applicant's getting a surprise. I know I'm getting a surprise. So, I obviously defer to the chair. If we're going to go forward, we're going to go forward. But I think we've got some real problems in this matter, besides whether one fence is made out of metal or wood.
What's other commissioners, what's your feeling about how we should proceed tonight? Commissioner Erickson, did you have your hand up or not? You were just looking at, okay. Anyone have any view on going forward or requesting that staff give us an answer to this question or getting more clarification about what we get to look at? I'm just looking for other people's positions on this. Commissioner Bourgeois, do you have your hand up?
I agree that, I'm still not clear as to whether even we should be talking about this issue. On the one hand, if we can, then I think we weigh it like we would any other evidence. We have expert opinion on one side from our traffic engineers, the study that was done during the PD, and now we have this opinion from the architect, who's not an expert in the field, but it's kind of a common sense argument. So I think we just weigh it like we would any other evidence, but I'm still not clear whether or not we should even be talking about this. So.
Commissioner Erickson.
This is really a question probably likely for the town attorney. If I read the ordinance that was passed creating the plan development, Section 2 actually it establishes the zone and authorizes, if I read it correctly and understand it correctly, authorizes construction and use of improvements, and it generally describes those. It doesn't specify the location on the site for any of the particular improvements. It just limits the number or specifies the number of them. So it doesn't, and there's nothing that I can read in a quick reading of the PD ordinance that was adopted by the town council that specifies where the building, where any particular structure goes or doesn't go. It leaves that to the official development plan and the architectural and site application, which is the hearing on the architectural and site application, but it specifies that who has the authority for the architectural and site application decision is the Planning Commission. So it seems like to me, other than the number of the specified uses and the number of them, that where they are and how they fit and what the circulation is not specified in the PD ordinance.
The PD ordinance does specify the setbacks. It says the minimum setbacks are documented on the approved plans. I'm looking at performance standard number 6 on page 3 of the PD ordinance, and it says that the minimum setbacks permitted are documented on the approved plans. And then we also have another condition on house size, which says the footprint, square footage, and height of each house shall be consistent with the development plans. And I don't think there is a lot of room to start changing footprints and making a lot of adjustments, because that was already established. The size and footprints and square footage and height of each house has already been set by this. So, I think you have some flexibility, but not a lot.
Okay. Let me just see if I can ask it this way. I'm looking at Section 5 of the ordinance, which is on page 2. And it says the attached Exhibit A map, we have that, and it's just basically a diagonal in block that is the lot. And Exhibit B, paren development plans, are part of the official development plan. The following must be complied with before issuance of any grading or construction permits. Then it gets to number 1, and it says, the official development plans and this ordinance establish the allowed uses and intensity of development. The official development plans are conceptual in nature such that minor deviations may be approved through the architecture and site approval process, that's us, if necessary to achieve architectural excellence, and to me that means paint color. And the Planning Commission shall be the deciding body. So my question's, we don't have Exhibit B. We don't know what the official development plans are. Is that the tentative map that says where the road is, that says where the access is, that says where the buildings are, that's already been approved by the DRC? Is that something else that's been decided by the staff in accordance with this ordinance? So, and I still haven't heard the definitive answer to Commissioner Bourgeois' question is, regarding the circulation, regardless of what our Exhibit 7 and what Mr. Cannon has to say, do we as a Planning Commission even get to talk about that?
Okay, in response to what your purview is and the footprints, you can tweak the footprints provided it works within the approved subdivision where the property lines are that are shown in your development plans. The exterior, the minimum exterior setbacks were approved as part of the plan development, and that's around the perimeter of the property. The interior setbacks can be modified provided they work within the approved property line boundaries that have been approved as part of the tentative map. In terms of circulation, there potentially could be some minor tweaks with that, provided it's concurrent with the traffic study that was done for the project. And I'd like to ask if, though, you could talk to the project's engineer, and I agreed that there was some confusion, and staff apologizes for that, for not having a thorough report done by Larry Cannon and have it corrected, that we believe that they have actually met with the architectural consultant, Mr. Cannon, and have resolved these issues, and we think we can get a response from them. If you're not satisfied with the response or there's additional questions, as Ms. Propp had mentioned, then you could continue this for further evaluation. But I do think a lot of the answers can be presented through the project's engineer.
Okay, one follow-up, and then I'll stop torturing you. What's a minor tweak?
Well, you could look at, in terms of architectural, in terms of window placement, things like that, building materials, and the footprint. I mean, you can remove or relocate the interior footprints of the development, but the exterior development, you cannot make them go closer to the property line. You can make them go further from the property line, but you cannot make them allow them to be tweaked to go closer and project into the allowed setbacks.
Okay, you said minor tweak to the circulation. What do you mean minor tweak?
Well, the subdivision has established where the driveways are. If they could be moved over a little bit, that would be okay. But you can't move them over a lot where it go over a property line.
Okay, a foot, an inch, a half block?
You'd have to ask the engineer.
Okay.
It depends how the circulation works, and it won't impact circulation on exterior streets.
If I may, just as an additional piece of information, just essentially the lot lines, given the tentative map's been approved, the lot lines need to stay established. If you need to move, if it's the desire to move the footprint slightly where it does not affect the lot lines, that is something that is that you do have the that you may be able to review. But as long as the lot lines are not affected, that is the main concern.
I have not seen I guess, is it a recorded subdivision map at the moment?
No, currently the tract map is being reviewed and being finalized. The tentative map has been established. The final map is essentially the same lot line configurations as the tentative map.
Well, we don't have either, I guess is what I'm saying.
That is correct. It's already been approved.
Well, if we can do minor deviations to a document we haven't seen, that even makes it harder, doesn't it?
The plans that you have do show the property lines.
Which plans do we have?
This in your packet. Those are.
There's a lot of
You mean
plans
which
in my
sheet?
packet.
You mean
I'm
which
looking
sheet?
at A10. Is that one of the plans?
residential site plan is sheet ARSP, and it is actually posted on the wall behind you as well, behind Commissioner Erickson.
AR what?
SP.
SP what?
I think what I heard you say is that the tentative map has been approved. The tentative map has the lot lines, it has the driveways, it has the road, it has the access, it has the open space. It's been approved by the Development Review Committee. The Development Review Committee was established as the deciding body with authority to do that by the Town Council, and it's done.
Yes.
And so we don't have anything to say about that. Is that correct? We have something to say about window placement and architecture. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, okay.
That's, there's two site plans. The sheet A 1.0 is the site plan that shows the commercial component. And that's like the second sheet of the page, plans.
Just to follow up on that, if I may, that being the case, and I can certainly accept that, that will really narrow our conversation. But within the architectural site, for example, I think Mr. Cannon comments on the garages behind the townhouses. Now, I assume that kind of comment is within the purview of architectural site, even though I don't know how you solve the problem he's commenting on, nor has anybody suggested that it was a problem, except he did. But I think, I guess what I'm hearing now is we can forget the prior half an hour or so of discussion. We can ignore almost all the problems that Mr. Cannon has raised, except things like the back garages, things like that. Is that fair to say?
They changed the back design based on his comments.
According to Ms. Avila, she says the garages have been redesigned, though it's not noted in your report, to meet Mr. Cannon's requirements.
Nor is it shown. This is just a secret. I mean, it's crazy.
Let me see his report.
Now that we're all thoroughly confused and frustrated,
I believe it does say in the report. I think I told the
I guess I'd like to get the consensus of the Planning Commission. We've heard a couple of things. We've heard that we have Exhibit 7 from Mr. Cannon that's just been seen tonight by the engineer or the assistant engineer. We've heard that there are some design changes to garages, and we actually can discuss the garage design, which have been changed but aren't shown on our plans. We're unclear exactly on our purview, and it seems like our staff report just isn't clear. There's things that we don't know, that we don't have in front of us. And I guess I'm just looking to my fellow commissioners to determine whether we want to have a correct and complete staff report, we want to know exactly what we're looking at, or we want to go ahead and have the hearing and then do what we're going to do with respect to garage designs. Where do you come out on that? Commissioner Talsfor.
I mean, after all the years I've served up here, this is, unfortunately, a very disturbing kind of presentation and rather embarrassing for, I think, all of us. I'm feeling very uncomfortable. But I'm not comfortable making or looking at any of this tonight unless I know what I'm looking at. And I have something else to talk about, but I'll do that in a minute. But so I'm not comfortable with going forward at this point unless we wanted to look at some part of it that was really narrow, and then they'll have to come back. I'm very confused. So, and maybe we need to suggest next time when we're looking at architecture and site that you actually list out what we can look at, and because this seems to be like an evolving list of issues.
Commissioner Erickson, Commissioner Bourgeois, Commissioner Sayak, what's your position? Commissioner Sayak.
First, I have two additional questions that hopefully does fall within the purview of our authority tonight, and then I can make a comment with regard to the entire process. I do have a question on number 5 and number 7, page 2 and 3 of our development standards. Number 5 is specific to demolition, and
it states the demolition of the existing structures shall occur within 30 days of the approval and A&S applications. Obviously, we're in question of when that will happen, but I would like some clarification from staff on what exactly happens if demolition does not occur within 30 days?
The applicant is prepared to start demolition within 30 days. If they didn't, they'd be in violation of the PD ordinance. So but they do, and I think the applicant can also address this, but they've already submitted plans to engineering for a grading permit, and that's been under review for some time and is very close to being issued. They've also discussed with the building department how to get a demolition permit, and they have all of their sign-offs that they need for the permit, with the exception of the West Valley Sanitation, which they're still working on. But the applicant is aware of that condition and is prepared to start demolition within 30 days of approval of the application.
Okay. And if I may have a follow-up, there's a difference between demolition and breaking ground on the project. And is there a requirement that the ground has to be broken within a certain time of A&S approval?
There is not a specified time frame, but they do have a 2-year approval on the architecture and site application, so they would need to obtain building permits and start construction and have an inspection on the foundation to vest that approval. So that would have to occur at a worst-case situation within 2 years of approval.
Within A&S approval, or within?
Within 2 years of A&S approval, they would have to actually start construction and have an inspection on the foundation.
Okay. And my second question is with regard to number 7, project phasing. I know I had raised this when this came before us, and many iterations have occurred since then. I know the concern that I had raised when this was brought forward was in terms of phasing. I was concerned that the residential would be built before the commercial. And I understand that this tries to mitigate that in that the 11th market rate unit, I'm assuming for residential, cannot be issued until the building permits of the commercial is done. My question is there anything we can do to ensure that the commercial occurs first so that the frontage on Los Gatos Boulevard is not unsightly as it continues to be now?
That particular performance standard, number 7, is actually aimed at getting the BMP units constructed at an appropriate point in the construction of the residential. That isn't pertinent to the commercial portion of the project. That is the reason for that standard is because we don't want the BMP units to be the last 3 units built in the project. And
So
that's
there was
really
no-
the intent behind that. I do believe the applicant intends to construct the commercial at this time. They are already working on obtaining tenants. They have 2 tenants interested in occupying the commercial portion of the project, and they may be able to address this further, but they are talking with tenants and trying to establish the tenant mix right now. So as far as we understand, they do intend to move forward with the commercial portion of the project, in a timely manner and not build the residential and not the commercial.
I understand that the intent, but I've also heard that same intent on another project.
Yeah, we don't have a condition that requires them to construct the commercial before the residential.
And so my question is that no longer applicable so that we can't specify this project phasing? Is this, number 7 is done so that it cannot be changed or edited or modified in any way?
You cannot amend the PD ordinance. That would have to go back through the town council. It may be possible to add some language to the architecture and site approval in the form of a condition.
Okay. Okay. And then with regards to our process tonight, I completely agree it's completely confusing, but I do feel that out of respect for the applicants who are here and ready to speak, and for anyone else who has come to speak on this matter, I would like to hear those comments tonight. Understanding, of course, that our purview may be completely limited and it may be a complete waste of time. So if anything, I'd like to, if there's some way to even ask the applicant and or those that are submitted cards, if there are comments they would like to make. I would just hate for people to make time to come to a meeting and then find out, but because of our own town mistakes, that time that has been allotted is no longer available. That's my concern.
Thank you, Commissioner Sayak. Commissioner Bourgeois.
Oh, I largely concur with Commissioner Sack, but I prepared for this meeting assuming kind of the typical limited purview that we have, and that the PD was approved, and that the footprints of what I was looking at were going to stay, and that we had, so that's how I prepared for the meeting, and I haven't heard anything that changes my mind that we have a very limited purview here tonight. So I'm prepared to move forward under those assumptions. But if we do have a larger purview, then we need answers to some of those questions. But I haven't heard anything that leads me to believe that we do have that.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I agree with what Commissioner Bourgeois said. I think our purview has been now discussed. I'm perfectly prepared to accept that it's a very limited purview, and that's fine. So I don't have a problem with that. I have a little problem with the condition of the record, and in particular the staff report, because a number of the things we've heard tonight is just not there. I don't doubt that staff is correct when they say it's happened, but that's not before us. So tonight, we will hear from, if we do, we'll hear from the applicant. Eventually, we got to hear from the staff. And I think it would be unfair to expect the staff to be able to amend or supplement their staff report tonight. So if everybody says, fine, we're going to go forward, but I don't know whether it's going to be kept open, because then the applicant's not going to know what the staff report is, because the staff report, I think, ought to be finalized. So I guess the question would be, if we're going to do this, I'd like to do it. And I'd like to save everybody time and everything else. But I'd also like to see a staff report that backs up the things I've heard tonight. And that is not within the ambit of the applicant to do that. That's the staff's job. So if everybody thinks we can close the public hearing tonight and receive at some point an amended staff report and not have to open the public hearing, I'd like to hear that.
Commissioner Erickson, we haven't heard your view on this, if you have one.
I was, as Commissioner Bourgeois did, prepared for the meeting, assuming the same limited purview that would be typical. I share Commissioner Sayak's concern about asking both the applicant and members of the public who are genuinely interested in the project not the opportunity to speak, but sometimes that happens, and that shouldn't trump getting it right. And I'm sure the applicant will come back again, and hopefully those members of the public, if we were to decide not to hear it, would come back again. It's not. I'd be happy to move forward tonight. It's not clear to me, however, if we did, that we would at the end, not presuming the answer, but that we would take any action. So it's not clear to me that if we move forward, that the outcome might not be to continue the item. So
Let me ask, I think it'd probably be Ms. Prop. Do we have a procedural option to listen to the applicant, ask questions, and listen to anyone? And I only have one card from a member of the public so far. Take that testimony as we would, for example, on item 1. Here are our comments, and then bring it back for a decision once we have the information we need from the staff, or must we go forward and make a decision one way or the other tonight?
As indicated by Commissioner O'Donnell, you certainly do have the ability to, you've already opened the public hearing for the purpose of taking information from staff. You can, you've already opened the hearing. You can open the public portion of that hearing and hear from both the applicant, members of the public. And at that point, if you believe you have adequate information and your concerns and questions have been answered tonight, then the commission could decide to close the public hearing and deliberate and make a decision. If at the conclusion of the public portion of the testimony tonight that you feel that you still need a revised staff report, supplemental information, then the recommendation would be at that point to leave the public hearing open, continue the matter for the next available date when the staff can come back with additional information, and in conjunction with the applicant and certainly the members of the public that are interested in this project available, and then keep the public hearing portion open at that meeting, take whatever additional testimony or hearing information that you need, close the public hearing, and decide at that point.
Okay. So I'm going to just take the prerogative to call the applicant forward. Let's hear what you have to say, and then we'll decide as a commission whether we want to keep the hearing open or we think that we're satisfied with what we've heard so that we can make a decision. So, sir, please identify yourself and fill out a card before you leave here tonight.
Thank you for, my name is Kevin Dare with CHL Ventures. We are the applicant. Thank you for this time. I just kind of want to cut through some of the key issues here. First and foremost, I agree with Commissioner Bourgeois and Commissioner Erickson as it relates to, we have an approved PD, and moreover, we have an approved tentative map that clearly defines and delineates each of the building footprints, all the circulation. So as it relates to the defined purview, it seems we have a very defined scope in terms of the buildings, because it's, again, a PD that's approved as well as the tentative map that's approved. So we're under the assumption that we'll be able to move forward based on that and be able to discuss kind of, we had talked about, kind of the limited purview. My question, if that's not the case, is what makes this atypical? Why is this different than any other application? And that doesn't make any sense to me, because it seems to me that it's very defined. So that's number one. Number two, I can walk through each of the comments from Larry Cannon, because we have addressed. We did read through the comments, and we've spent time, and we've identified and addressed specifically certain comments, and even discussed with council some of these items. So as it relates to item number one, in terms of the placement of Building 2 and the parking between Los Gatos Boulevard and concern about the potential conflicts that it would generate along Placer Oaks and onto Los Gatos Boulevard, we discussed this at length with council and had the town architect, the traffic engineer, we've discussed that as well. So those were contemplated and opined. And at that point,
Mr. Dare, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask you, do you mean council C-O-U-N-C-I-L or council C-O-U-N-S-E-L?
Town council.
Thank you. Town council, the body, or town council, the attorney? Thank you.
Body. So we did discuss that at length. And so that was one of the key issues, because there was anecdotal comments of concern about traffic impacts onto Los Gatos Boulevard. And when we actually talked to the traffic engineer, we've identified that that actually is not an impact, no more than, and that was not of concern. So you don't see changes to the plan simply because that was not a concern that was raised, and we discussed it at length with the traffic engineer. The second item, as it relates to the auto court, their concern was about traffic backing up along and impacting Blossom Hill Road. And if you actually look at what we did make modifications. Specifically, there is a stop sign and a keep clear sign to make sure that there is no impact from when someone is driving along Blossom Hill, turns into the project, and then goes into the residential. There's a keep clear sign and two stop signs that we've included after we've gotten comments from Mr. Cannon. So that was clearly identified. And when we spoke, we met with Mr. Cannon, and his issues, the reason why I think to the staff's credit, they didn't address those issues because we conveyed and working with Mr. Cannon address those issues. So that should not be another issue. That is an issue that we can cross off the board. So that's number two. Number three, as it relates to where we're at from a construction standpoint, I know Commissioner Sayak asked, where are we at as it relates to our construction period? If we get approved tonight, we are ready. We actually have completed our construction documents for the commercial. So actually the commercial is even ahead of the residential just by a few weeks. So we're ready to go. Not only have we have tenants, but we are ready to construct. So we're pulling our demo permit hopefully Monday or Tuesday of next week, Lord willing. And then we're starting to demolish. And before the end of the year, we're actually starting the on-site improvements. So I understand the concern, but we are putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak. We've actually have our construction documents ready. We're ready to submit by early next week for the commercial. And we're ready to bring this thing to bear. So this is a real actionable project. So it does create a lot of, I guess, disconsternation when I'm hearing that the idea of moving building footprints, because we've addressed all of those issues with staff as well as with the traffic engineers, the experts that actually will study the actual numbers. So I appreciate Mr. Cannon's comments. I think we've actually addressed them. We've discussed it at length with council and actually with the community. So to me, I don't understand why we can't actually go to the limited scope, because we're there. We're ready to move forward from a construction basis. We've done everything in accordance to the PD. We should be able to move forward, and I'm asking you for your approval tonight so we can actually do that. Because this project has been sitting there for quite a long time. It took 4.5 years to get approvals and entitlements. We've discussed all these issues. So to me, that book is closed. Now it's about my understanding about the PED, and obviously you guys are the experts. My understanding of the PED is that we're spending time and effort based on the approved tentative map as well as approved PD to take it to the next level. And what does that mean?
Okay, Mr. Dare, your time is up, I think. But there's probably questions. Commissioner Erickson.
Could you please address the other issues that Mr. Cannon did in his report that you haven't had a chance to address?
So item number 3. So shoppers in Building 2 who wish to walk to the shops in Building 3 may be tempted to walk between the parked cars. So we've actually enhanced the walkway between the buildings. So if you actually look at the site plan, we've identified the clear walkway and protected that.
What sheet number is that, Mr. Dare?
What sheet number?
A1.
So as you can, there's a direct access point, and we actually have a safe harbor location right in between the parking stalls, between buildings 2 and the shop, retail shops 1.
The site plan it is on the wall. That's the civil plan. That's the gradient and drainage plan, which also shows the circulation. The civil plan is sheet C-2.0, and that's the one over on the far right. The other 2 site plans are right here behind Commissioner Erickson. That's the bottom of the 2 site plans on the wall there.
I appreciate the comments and being made. I just want to make sure I look at the right document. For example, the stop sign and the sign are not on A1. They are on the map up there. And what he's talking about now for the pedestrian crossing, apparently it's not on A1 either. It must be on another document. So I just want to get which documents I'm supposed to look at.
The civil plan, which is the sheets, the C sheet that is hung over there behind Commissioner Sayoc, is the one that shows all the circulation and shows the stop signs.
Is C1 in our packet?
Yes, it is. It's C-2.0 is what it is. It's called a conceptual gradient and drainage plan.
Of course you look there. So could he continue then and show where on C20 what he's talking about is?
So as it relates, so we've, instead of adding an additional crosswalk, we've enhanced the existing one. So there is actually, so they would walk from building 2.
Mr. Dare, is it possible for you to put this up on the overhead so we can see what you're referring to?
This was it. I don't know. Enhanced it.
And if you're going to move to the map, take the mic with you, please.
That's A1.
You have A1 up there. Do you want us to look at C2 or A1? So we want to see the pedestrian and the stop signs.
Here's the stop right here. It says stop. It's hard to read, but it says stop.
Good for you. You can
This may
better.
something. It's upside down, so it might, I guess, be better if it was right side up. But jeez, this is like crazy. This says keep clear or clear. Yeah, keep clear. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
This is horrible.
Well, that's the staff screw up is what it is.
It's going to get worse when these cars
Yeah, these, I guess, are changes back here. Oh, my God. All the things around the conceptual grading and drainage plan?
Okay, Mr. Dare, is that C2?
This is C2, sorry.
Okay, can
Yeah.
you show us where the stop signs are?
The stop signs are
There's
right
another
here
one right here.
and right here. So I know it's a poor resolution, but if someone's driving along along Blossom Hill and they enter off of Blossom Hill, the concern was if there was car queuing within the project, it would prevent them from actually going into the residential. So what we've done is we've created a stop sign before the entry point, as well as we've added a keep clear. So if there is no, so we would be able to actually have clear traffic flow through. And then we have actually created a stop sign on this corner as well. So that addresses item number 2. Item number 3, this is the connection point between this building and this area here. Before we had just a walkway and it was unprotected. So what we've done is we actually have a walkway, we protected it, as well as we have an area that they can cross over right into a plaza. So that addresses item number 3.
Commissioner Talsfor?
Can I ask what you mean by protected?
Well, before it was, first of all, number 1, it was not marked very well. So we actually have included special and kind of clear delineated paving. Secondly, in between, in effect, it acts as an island. So they can walk, and we've basically created almost a little bit of a barrier. Not like a vertical barrier, but there's a wider area for them to stand as opposed to just a walkway. So when you're walking from here to here, basically in between the street, there's a midpoint for them, and there's basically no stalls for them that they have to walk around or next to. So there's basically a barrier right in the middle of the walkway. And then basically it makes it so that they can enter there or cross into kind of where building number 3 is, I guess.
Did you finish addressing, Mr. Erickson asked you to go through the comments of Mr. Cannon. Did you get through all of them?
As it relates to item number 4, the precise design for the fence separating the retail and the residential portions, we actually have that in the landscape plan. Let me see.
The landscape plan is sheet L2, and it's probably the
right.
L2 and L1, the last 2 sheets of the plan set.
That's great. So what we've identified, and so we're going to have between, along the spine of the
And tell us what you're looking at. Is this what is
This is
sheet are you on?
A1. So I'm looking at A1 and L2, so flipping back and forth. So in between the property of the commercial and the residential, along this line right here, we're going to have a wrought iron fence, and that is reflected in L2. And this area is where we can have, it's going to be able to be suitable for having vegetation on the fencing. So it's not just a black fence. We are certainly envisioning that we're going to basically make it a green screen, so to speak, but have it be where there is a distinction between. And then there is no fence area in between the park area and the commercial. So we want it to be, as we had discussed at Planning Commission and at Council, that we're going to have kind of an open space to make it basically publicly accessible. But along this portion of the project where the residential is, we're going to have a stucco-based wall as opposed to just a redwood fence to be able to have that's more of the Spanish colonial style. So that's going to be along this edge. So we've addressed that issue. So that's number 4. Number 5, the architecture of the retail buildings is well designed with visual variation and interesting detail. So he has no comment on item number 5. So then the next page is, I see residential neighborhood number 1. The tall wood patio walls along the interior walls are less desirable than stucco walls. So we've turned that into stucco walls. So we've addressed item number 1. Item number 2, the garage facade on the townhouse is repetitive and less visually appealing than the typical garage facade on all the auto courts. So this is Dan Hale, and he can address those particular issues.
Mr. Hale, will you introduce yourself and tell us what your role is in this project?
Good evening. Dan Hale, Hunt Hale Jones Architects. We are the residential architect for the project. I think Mr. Cannon's comments were constructive and appropriate. And this elevation shows you the revised townhouse elevation, which are, I think what he refers to as the garage doors that face the front doors of the others. So the changes we have made from the previous submittal to respond to Mr. Cannon's comments include the following. We have included...
Can I stop you for a second? We can't quite see the sheet number there. Do we have that in our packet?
ARTH4. It's towards the end of the packet, probably about 6 or 7 pages from the end. ARTH4.
It's not in the AR, it's not.
So I would agree that previously the elevation of the townhomes was a little bit monotonous. So we started with including different size and different window grid patterns. We call it grid patterns. That starts with giving some variety. Then we added different style shutters. Previously we had all the same style shutter. So we have different style shutters, which if you think then that they will have different color on them, gives another level of variety to the buildings. We've added different pot shelves. They used to be all the same. Pot shelves are window boxes that go under the window. So we've added different window boxes within the different plan types. Additionally, we've started to add what we call them trellises over the garage doors. What they do is these are wood elements that stick out about 18 to 24 inches. Many times you get vines growing on them over the years. And then it starts to break up at the ground level, the pedestrian level, kind of the continuous garage door effect. So we think within the elevation of the townhomes, we started to create a pattern and a rhythm that provides variety and opportunity and addresses Mr. Cannon's concerns.
Questions? Thank you.
To continue on number 3, that's a comment. There's no question there. As it relates to item number 4, we've actually included stamped concrete to actually to address his point about having some type of special paving. So, and then the last comment is related to the 2 parking stalls at the end of the project. And so in terms of addressing this particular comment, one thought that we had was that we could actually, the question was who's going to use those 2 stalls for the majority of the time? It's going to be people that live there or people that know the project. And so when you drive in, one option is to actually include a larger mirror at the end. So when someone can look down, they can see if there is actually a parking stall that's there. So kind of a half-dome mirror, so you can actually see and basically easily tell if something's there or not. So that was one way that we thought we can address that particular issue. So besides that, that's why I really believe that we have addressed each of the comments. And they're very fair comments, and I think we've actually addressed it and spent time considerably thinking through those things. So with that, I don't know if you have any other questions.
Other questions for Mr. Dare? Commissioner O'Donnell.
The last point you made about putting a mirror there, when one drives down to the end of that long, hesitate to call it a cul-de-sac, how do you turn around?
As it relates to when you're driving down here, how do you?
Mirror, and you say, oh, good, there's a parking spot. So you drive down the end of it, and you park.
Right.
Now, you have two choices. You can park facing the way you're going, or you can turn around and face coming out. There is no cul-de-sac bulb on that, is there?
No, you just make a 3-point turn. So if you're in a stall, you just back out. You can go.
And so the two parking spots we're talking of are, would you just point them out?
They'd be right here. They're basically they'd be parallel to this unit right here. So it'd just be as if you're parking in the garage,
So
but
you
just uncovered.
You just pull into that
That's right.
and you back out.
That's right.
And those would be guest parking?
Guest parking. And we have substantial guest parking along this entire edge. So it's, those two stalls, I think we can address it. I don't think they're not going to make or break accessibility to guest stalls because we have so many of them on site.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Talsfor.
Yes, I have a question about the open space under the performance standard.
Yes.
Open space. And it said the landscape plan shall provide details aimed at strengthening the integration
Yes.
of the open space with the residential development. Frankly, I don't find that open space integrated at all with the development. And I'm thinking, you're speaking of the residential development, correct? That's what we're talking about? I find it, we have houses all to one side of it, and I'm just having a hard time seeing how the landscape is going to integrate it into the development.
Sure. That's a fair question. So the question that we asked ourselves, right, is that what is the purpose of the space?
Right.
Right? So it has to serve, if you remember the original plan, we actually had the open space over here. And the comments that we consistently received was, it's not integrated. Sorry, a little technical difficulty here. But the question is, what does it mean to be integrated and what does that look like? So I think there's two things for us. One is that we have to be mindful that this is something that we want to create synergy right in the middle of the project. So imagine if you are getting a sandwich at the project and it's a very nice day and you want to go outside and sit, this is something that's unique where we can have all these park benches that line this grass area. Or if you're waiting to get into line for dinner, you have your kids out there and you're playing in the grass area. On the flip side, you have the residences, right? So we need to make sure that we can accommodate and make sure that it feels like it's part of a community. So the question is, what would do that? And so part of our idea was a larger grass space, shade trees, park benches, and that it creates a place of community. Now, we don't have necessarily a lot of structures or other things that we were contemplating, but if that's something that you guys want us to consider, we can definitely consider that or, condition us as part of the project. But that to us meant that having it be central to the project, having it to be where a place people can sit and have the active open space, I think we've addressed that.
So are you telling me that that open space is accessible to the visitors to the shopping area?
That's right.
As well as the residents?
Correct.
So how do those barbecues work then?
What do you mean?
How does that work?
Functionally?
Does that mean if I decided that I wanted to go have a barbecue there, I could do that, even though I was just shopping and I didn't live there?
Yeah, the barbecue concept, we can actually pull that out if you don't think that makes sense. But the idea was to have a place where, residences, you have 25 homes. There is a common area space for them to come in and use. And, we can securitize that, maybe lock it or whatever that is, so it's really only the residences can have access to it. But the idea was that we wanted to have some type of amenity that would actually be useful for the people that live here.
Okay, I still don't see how the landscaping is strengthening
I guess maybe the question
the
is,
integration of the open space with the residential. See, I find it very isolating. I don't know what to say. Maybe a reconfiguration of it, I don't know. That's all, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Dare? Commissioner Bourgeois.
One clarification, one comment. When you said, getting back to the traffic issue, especially the ingress egress on Placer Oaks. You said you went over that with council. I'm assuming you were talking about through the PD process.
Through the PD process.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was you hadn't had subsequent conversations. So this was
through the PD process.
Vetted through the PD process.
That's correct.
Okay. And then my other comment was I like Commissioner Talsfor, I was a little confused by the barbecue pits.
Okay.
It just doesn't seem.
Yeah, we can take them out.
By my count, there's like 4 of them there. If I got my little icons correct, it just seemed a very odd.
Sure.
An odd amenity for that. So I actually appreciate the passive open space and kind of letting that space kind of find its own user. But yeah, that seemed like an odd amenity to me.
We can definitely take that out.
Any other questions? Commissioner Stayak.
Mr. Dare, so you mentioned that you guys are basically ready for the commercial demolition as well as construction. One of the conditions, I know that during the PD process there was significant neighborhood concern over the increased traffic, noise, dust, et cetera, everything that is associated with it. And one of the things that we implemented was condition 123, which was neighborhood construction management plan.
Yes.
And it says it's a weekly neighborhood email notification program. Has that been initiated? Is that something that you plan to initiate as soon as you get approval?
Yes.
And can you remind me that neighborhood construction, what's the radius? What is considered your neighborhood, and who will be receiving those?
As it relates to, and I don't know if we've actually defined the actual radius clause. I guess I assumed that it was immediate neighbors that are adjacent to the project. I know I've talked to Ms. McDaniel several times, just in general, and so she's going to be in many ways kind of my open line of communication, but we can define that.
Okay.
Just let us know what that looks like.
My concern is that in 2 weeks, school is going to start,
Yeah.
and we have significant construction now on Los Gatos Boulevard in front of Roberts and I can't remember, but it's at the corner of Roberts, Shannon, and Los Gatos Boulevard, which is access to Fisher. And so I know a lot of kids who are riding or biking to school are now planning to use Blossom Hill Road as their way to get to Fisher to circumvent all that traffic. My concern is once construction begins here, now we have 2 areas that are heavily trafficked, and so I am asking of you to coordinate with the construction managers of that project to ensure that there's clear communication of what will be occurring when. And in your emails to the neighborhoods, if you can clearly communicate that as well, because I understand that a lot of these neighborhoods are sharing information so that their kids can get to school safely.
Sure. No, that's great.
And if I may, could you give us a status of your other project that is on Gateway and Los Gatos Boulevard? Because the last time you came before us, you also said that that was ready for construction. And so I just want to make sure that that ready for construction isn't the same ready for construction that you're saying today.
Yeah, so just to clarify, that project is going to be basically for a full single tenant. So when I say it's ready for construction, subject to that particular tenant being ready. Here, we have 30,000 square feet of retail and 25 homes. We're not basing it just waiting for one tenant to come. So we actually have we are starting construction with respect to the project. Not only do we have tenants lined up already with this particular project, but we're not waiting for one tenant to take the whole building for us to be able to move forward.
So just to clarify, you're ready for construction on this one at 16005 Los Gatos Boulevard?
Yes.
But you are still not ready on the other project?
Well, we are still working with this particular tenant. It's a little slow, but yes, we're working on and we're trying to get our plans together as soon as possible to help identify. We have the tenant. We're working with them right now. It's just been taking a little longer than we expected.
Okay. And again, as I had said before, it's a concern to the neighborhood that the condition of the property, as is this, has been subpar.
Okay.
So again, the request, if you can make sure that that maintenance continues on a weekly basis at a very minimum.
Understood.
Other questions for Mr. Dare? Commissioner Talsfor.
I was taking a look at your Boulevard Retail Center, Did you, is this, I found it interesting, but is this something that is from the architect? From you? Who is this from? Who developed this?
The sign,
Please introduce yourself and let us know your role.
My name is Kenneth Rodriguez, and my office is the project architect. And we did prepare the master sign program, which you're holding there.
Except that what I noticed in here, and I'm not sure, I thought this was created for the town of Los Gatos, and it has City of Pleasanton in it.
Oh, there may have been a typo in it. We have a master sign program.
Is this what this is?
Yes, it's a master sign program. So if there's that's a typo.
Okay, because what I was hoping is that it would reflect what's in the commercial design guidelines.
It does.
Does it of Los Gatos?
We've gone through and we've looked at each and every item that we've put in here, and we've placed it in there for a reason. It's consistent with the sign guidelines. Best of my knowledge, and staff may help me on this, but it's consistent with the sign guidelines and the design guidelines.
Okay, well, all right, well, just so I know that this is meant, it is meant for here and not for the City of Pleasanton.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Other questions for Mr. Dare? Thank you, sir. I'm now going to ask anyone who's a member of the public to talk with us about this project, and I do have one card from Mr. Shepherdson.
I was wondering if I could see, we could put on the Elmo the landscaping plans. Yeah.
Mr. Shepherdson, we'll get the staff hopefully to help you with that. Can you give us a number that you care about? Is that L1?
I don't have a number for it. Yes.
And if you want to point to a particular thing, if you just pull the microphone out and take it over, that we'd appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Chairperson Jensen. With respect to the approval of the project before the town council, an issue came up with respect to, I live at Oakram Way, 120, and an issue came up of the view corridors for the occupants of our complex. And it was represented that there was going to be these view corridors as part of the mitigation for the project, and that seemed to be persuasive to the council. And so I happened to come across this plan before the final approval, and actually it's not in this landscaping plan apparently, but what was placed in the view corridor was what I noted to be redwood screening. And so I inquired what that was, and apparently it was contemplated to plant redwood trees in the view corridor. And so I raised this with Mr. Rodriguez, and he said, oh, that we can change that, and you can raise it at A&S. And so I don't know how all this works because it's in the landscaping plan that was approved, but I was told now is the time to raise that issue, and I think this is within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission here. So that's why I'm here, is to make sure that the view corridor is clear, because there was redwood screening in it, which would seem to obstruct the view corridor once that redwood trees would grow. And then also down the street, there was also on the landscaping plan a picture of the canopy trees, these large canopy trees sort of touching to the middle of the street. And so if those large canopy trees are in the view corridor, then again, that's obstructed. So that's why I want to raise that for your consideration. just very quickly, I was, and I really didn't come here to talk about this, but the question was raised about that driveway and the turnaround. I would be a little bit concerned if a car drives in, there's those 2 parking spaces. If you drive in there and you don't see that mirror and you're halfway down the street and there's cars in there, what do you do? Do you just back up because you can't make that turn? So with that.
Mr. Shepherdson, thank you, but I'm going to ask you to go to the diagram. Can you just show us what you mean by the view corridor so we know what you're talking about? Just point it out on that plan if you can. If you can.
Here?
Yeah.
There was, it's very difficult with this diagram, but the view corridor is essentially between down the streets, and then also there was a gap between the buildings, and so that was a view corridor, and I believe they were represented to be about 45 feet. So maybe Mr. Rodriguez could discuss this further, but it was the streets and then the gaps between the buildings. So, but I can't really describe it on this diagram here because I can't really tell where the, I guess one corridor is here. One corridor would be down the street, wherever that is here, and then it was between the buildings themselves when it's not on a street. Maybe there's another one over here. So there was 3 or 4 view corridors, and on a different diagram, you could, other than this, it had a circle like this, and it said redwood screening. And so I didn't know what that was, and then it was explained to me that that was going to be redwood trees.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Shepherdson? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I only have one card from a member of the public to talk about this, and that's Mr. Shepherdson. He's just got finished talking. Is there anybody else who wants to talk to us about this? Okay. Mr. Dare or Mr. Rodriguez or whoever you choose has 3 minutes to address Mr. Shepherdson's comments.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Ken Rodriguez again. The plan does show trees along here. The redwood trees are located here. This is a continuous evergreen screen that starts at Blossom Hill and runs up this property line. These homes are a different condition than the homes from their association. The view corridors are still located here exactly where they were. We do show trees here. These are not redwoods. These are, and we'd be happy to change to another tree type if the residents so choose along this side. And I think where he was pointing was down in here where this other project starts, which runs roughly around right here. And you can see these dotted lines here. These are all of the existing redwoods and evergreens that exist today there, and they are dense. So we'd be happy to entertain any other idea for plant material along there, or we could remove trees there. I mean, but in our case, you know, it's heavily planted. You can see that from the planting plan. And I thought Mr. Shepherdson did a nice job of just showing you where the driveways were. He's right about where they show, and then there's another one right here.
Questions for Mr. Rodriguez? Commissioner Sayoc.
Mr. Rodriguez, do you have your landscape architect present that can provide suggestions?
No, we don't.
Okay.
I'll do my best to try to answer those.
No, I'm just looking for an expert to tell me what trees would help mitigate Mr. Shepherdson's concern. So.
Well, his concern was if, in fact, it's a evergreen
right.
redwood, we'd be happy to change that to a deciduous tree. We have other trees that are shown on this plan. We could select another tree, and I'm happy to have that as a condition of approval. That is not a problem.
Okay.
And we'd be happy to work with the city arborist to come up with the appropriate I think deciduous tree, it sounds like there, so they lose their leaves in the wintertime, and then they have lighter leaves in the spring and summer.
Okay.
Is that consistent?
Any other questions?
Well,
Actually,
me.
we're just
I
going to
did ask-
have discussions between the commissioners and the person at the podium. So, Mr. Shepperson, you could talk after. Any other questions for Mr. Rodriguez?
The one point I did want to mention, if I could, Chairperson Jensen, is I wanted to be consistent with what the homeowners were looking for there. If they're looking for an evergreen tree or no tree, we're happy to provide that. So whatever condition of approval you see fit tonight to do on their behalf, we would like to agree to that.
Okay. And Madam Chair, if I may, since I'm the one that asked the question, what I'll do when it is time for Commissioner deliberations is have staff direction on how to proceed on this. Thank you
very much.
Other questions for Mr. Rodriguez? Thank you. I don't see any. At this point, I would traditionally close the public hearing, but we were given advice on our options given the questions that we had about the staff report. So I'm going to look to the commission to determine whether we want to get a complete and thorough staff report, whether we're comfortable with what we've heard tonight and want to go forward. What is the pleasure of the commission? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just sort of a survey kind of comment. I'm prepared to move forward tonight, I think.
Okay, I don't see anybody doing something different. Commissioner Bourgeois?
Yeah, I agree. I still feel our purview is as I thought it was going to be when we got here, and I feel like we've gotten answers to our questions.
Then I'm going to look to the commission for a motion. Oh, Mrs. Pop is reminding me to close the public hearing, so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to look to the commission for a motion. Or Commissioner Sayek, did you want to ask staff your question regarding the proper procedure for trees?
Actually, it sounds like a condition of approval would be sufficient. You know, I'll go ahead and start a motion on this. I think we've heard significant discussion already tonight, as well as in previous meetings regarding the plan development. As with all plan development, this has been decided by town council, and there was discussion this evening about what exactly the Planning Commission's purview is with regard to this project. I believe, and I think it has been supported by both testimony as well as staff, that our purview is rather limited, not only in this, but as with all A&S where PDs have already been approved. I strongly believe that that is the case. There were 4 issues that were raised to us by the town architect. 2 of those really cannot be discussed any further because the plan development clearly shows where the lines and basically where the development is. And so any way to mitigate those concerns cannot be done without changing the entire plan development. So with regard to the issues that are available to us, which was the elevations for the townhomes, as well as I believe there was another change on landscaping. I believe that the staff report, as well as the testimony tonight, clearly shows that it does follow the plan development. There was a concern by a resident to mitigate the screening with regards to the view corridors. I will ask the staff I will make that a condition of approval, that staff work with the applicant as well as the neighbor to ensure that the adequate landscaping addresses that concern. I will also throw in actually, I don't know if I can do this as a condition of approval, but I do have a strong concern with the construction management, that construction of this project is closely coordinated with the construction that is ongoing with, I don't even know what the name of the development is, but it's the development.
It's called Laurel Muse.
Laurel Muse?
As it's Ropes and Homes project.
Correct, the one on Los Gatos Boulevard, Shannon, and okay. I'd like that to be closely coordinated because, as I stated during public testimony, those Blossom Hill Road and Roberts and Los Gatos Boulevard, it's the only way to Fisher, and with construction on those 2 projects occurring, that will severely impact the safety of some of the kids going there, and I want to make sure that we are doing everything in our purview to make sure that people are well alerted of what types of conditions are going to be occurring once school starts. So with that, I'm going to make the required findings and considerations in Exhibit 2. Let me start there. That architecture and site application S-12-042 through S-12-059 is subject to the performance standards included in the PD ordinance, which is contained in Exhibit 3, the conditions of approval, which are contained in Exhibit 4, and that the architecture and site that is before us is in compliance with the specific ordinance 2197.
Is there a second? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'll second that. If I just would clarify the condition that the screening vegetation along the view corridors be lowered or changed. Are you talking just in coordination with staff or in coordination with the neighbors?
In coordination with the staff and the neighbors. So.
Okay, great. And then I would also, to the maker of the motion, like to add, if they could possibly reconsider the amenities in the open space to the satisfaction of staff. I just don't see the use of 4 barbecue pits there. I think maybe more benches, something a little different might be a little better there.
Absolutely, I do concur. So if we can direct staff for that condition as well.
We have a motion to approve made by Commissioner Sayak, seconded by Commissioner Bourgeois. Are there comments or questions about the motion? Commissioner Telesfor.
I would like to suggest that we possibly bring, when signage is applied, when signage is applied to that front area, that it somehow come back to Planning Commission, or we could get some kind of a cursory look at it before it's approved. Whether it's just as a desk item one night, I don't even know how we would do that, or who I would ask, staff or Chairman Jensen. How would we?
Well, I think the first question is procedurally, does that need to be part of the motion and accepted by the mover and seconder, or is that properly a second motion to request that a particular building on this, under the signage plan, not be left to discretion of staff, but actually come back to Planning Commission?
What you could do is have a condition that the sign program be referred back to the Planning Commission, and we could do that in a memo format. To get your input on that, and so that would be a condition of approval. Since the sign program was part of the plan development, you do have purview over that.
Would that satisfy you, Commissioner Telesfor, number one?
Yes, that would.
Okay, and then Commissioner Sayak and Commissioner Bourgeois?
That's fine with me, but I do want to clarify that things like that could take place with a memo. It doesn't necessarily require another public hearing?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, then it's fine with me.
Commissioner Bourgeois? Is
Yes.
that okay? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve. Again, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Me. Although I fully understand the extraordinarily limited purview that we have in this project, I'm sufficiently uncomfortable with the information that's been provided that I really don't feel comfortable giving it my seal of approval, because I don't think we got a thorough and complete set of information here tonight. So I can't really approve the project, although I fully understand why my fellow commissioners are voting to approve, because we have extraordinarily limited power over what we can do. But the process, it wasn't something I could support tonight. So the motion passes 5-1 with Commissioner Jensen opposed. I was just going to inquire whether commissioners want a break. I have one commissioner who wants a break before. Okay.
Need appeal rights.
5-minute break. Oh, appeal rights.
This decision is appealable to the town council. The appeal must be filed within 10 days. There is a fee for filing an appeal, and the appeal forms are located upstairs in the town clerk's office.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, we're going to come back in session and consider item number 4, which is a draft sustainability plan for the town of Los Gatos. And I'm assuming we have a presentation because we have a slide up.
Good evening, Commissioners. Joanna Jensen from the Planning Center DC&E is here to give a brief presentation on where we have been with our sustainability plan process.
Thank you, Jennifer. I will run through this presentation very quickly. In particular, the first few slides kind of repeat information that you've already been provided in your staff report, so I don't want to belabor these points. I do want to say that in terms of the regulatory context for your sustainability plan, there's a growing body of state and regional legislation that very strongly encourages communities to adopt a GHG emissions reduction plan, which is what your sustainability plan would do, would be. It is not a technical requirement, but in this day and age, in terms of the evolving CEQA framework and Attorney General's letters, it is very difficult for a community to address greenhouse gas emissions and impacts and mitigate those impacts in the absence of an adopted plan like your sustainability plan. So a lot of questions that I get from cities are, is this required for us to adopt it? It's not required in the same way that a general plan or a housing element is required, but it's much easier for you if you do have one of these plans in place. That's the kind of the stick. The carrot is that if you have a qualified greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan, which is, again, what your sustainability plan will be, future development under this that is consistent with this plan can tier off of the greenhouse gas emissions analysis that the town has conducted as part of this planning process, and thereby would not need to conduct their own project-specific greenhouse gas analysis. As you've already seen in your staff report, this also implements General Plan Action ENV 13.1, which is part of your adopted general plan. And we are on schedule to adopt the sustainability plan within the time frame established by Action ENV 13.1. Throughout this process, which has been going on since last winter, we have been building on the input that we got through the General Plan 2020 update. We've had 2 study sessions with the Town Council, as well as both a community workshop and a community open house. The open house was held just in June, early June, right before the Town Council study session. Tonight, we're asking the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to Council, and then this plan will go to Town Council on September 4th for their action. So the sustainability plan itself includes these components that you see listed on the slide, an inventory of existing quote-unquote emissions, which we selected a baseline of 2008, given guidelines from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District and the availability of data, a forecast for the year 2020, which is the horizon year established by AB 32, the law that establish statewide targets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. The plan includes a target for the year 2020 and then a series of measures to achieve that targeted reduction. The measures can be divided into 2 broad categories: community-wide measures that affect all or many different types of development in the town, including private development projects, and then municipal operations measures that would affect things like the goods that the town purchases, the energy in town facilities, the town fleet, for example. And then it also includes a section that evaluates the cost effectiveness of each measure, the relative cost effectiveness, and establishes responsibilities and timelines for implementation of these measures. The measures are in the 8 categories that you see listed on the screen. Transportation and land use measures cover things like bicycle and pedestrian friendliness. Green building covers building materials. Renewable energy and low carbon fuels has measures relating to solar energy and other forms of alternative energy generation, as well as things like electric vehicles. Energy conservation is self-explanatory, I think. Water and wastewater sectors can generate GHG emissions through the electricity needed to treat or transport water and wastewater, and so anything that we can do to conserve water or reduce the amount of wastewater that we generate will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Solid waste addresses recycling and composting. Open space addresses the space for community gardens, which will reduce the greenhouse gas footprint of people's food here in Los Gatos. And community action are education and efforts that the public can undertake to increase awareness of climate change and greenhouse gas related issues. So consistent with AB 32, the Sustainability Plan establishes a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 15% below the baseline by 2020. Again, this is consistent with the statewide goal established in AB 32. This is a table that summarizes the existing emissions, what your target would be based on a 15% reduction from those emissions, what your 2020 business as usual emissions would be. We use business as usual to refer to what the emissions would be if no changes were made in our current practices. 2020 adjusted forecast is revised 2020 forecast that takes into account state and federal measures that will affect things like fuel mix or the way that electricity is generated in California, things that are beyond the town's control. You can see that just with those state and federal measures, we achieve a significant amount of reduction. So what's left over for the town to address through its plan is this 4,230 This abbreviation stands for metric tons of CO2 equivalents, carbon dioxide equivalents. This is the standard unit of measure for greenhouse gases. There are many different kinds of greenhouse gases. There are 6 different kinds that are specifically recognized in state law. Each one of those has a different level of effectiveness in terms of its impact in the atmosphere. So in order to be able to compare these gases, each is assigned a value that's called a carbon dioxide equivalent, meaning it's factored so that it is equivalent to the impact of a similar amount of carbon dioxide. So that's the abbreviation there. The town needs to address a gap of 4,230 metric tons, and through the draft sustainability plan that you're considering tonight, we estimate that you would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by about 9,300 metric tons. So you do exceed your target with the suite of measures included in the draft plan. And you would see then 2020 emissions at about 319,000, below the target of 324,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. Those reductions come from primarily measures that address transportation and land use and green building. You can see that those 2 sectors together contribute to 76% of the emissions reductions achieved by the plan as a whole. There are additional reductions that come from renewable energy and low carbon fuels measures, and energy conservation measures, and water and wastewater. I should note that for the measures in the solid waste, open space, and community action sectors, as well as for those measures that address municipal operations only, those measures did not have a modelable reduction for greenhouse gas emissions. That could mean that we don't have enough information available, or the model is not adequate to analyze those reductions. It could mean that those reductions are voluntary rather than mandatory, and therefore we can't really say with specificity how many people would participate, and therefore what reduction would be achieved. In the case of municipal operations, the emissions from town government operations are less than 1% of the overall emissions, and so a reduction from an individual measure within that 1% is too small for us to really accurately present data for from our model. So those are not shown based on the modeling results to contribute to the necessary targeted reduction. However, we believe that they are important things to do, that they contribute to the town's goals of being a more sustainable community, that they're consistent with the input that we heard from the community, and therefore we certainly think that they have a role to play in your sustainability plan, even though we can't necessarily assign a number to them based on our modeling. That's my final slide.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Jensen? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Can we also do questions of staff at this time?
I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I have some process-related questions. Commissioner Sayak and I have served on a sustainability committee that just kind of stopped happening. And this just seems like would have been the perfect avenue to engage that committee. And I was a little concerned reading through this that, the conclusion, Town Council has held 2 thorough study sessions, both before and after public input. And so why is it coming to us now? It seems like if the council's already approved it, then now we have to make a recommendation to council to approve it. The process seems confusing to me. It seems like it's coming from the top down instead of building its way bottom up through the committees. So I was just a little confused by the process.
From a process standpoint, the document in itself has a town council adoption requirement at that policy level, and we felt it was important to get their input from the very beginning on the measures so that the effort that we spent to model the measures was well spent, that we didn't spend a considerable amount of time measuring measures that the council wouldn't even deem appropriate in the town to begin with. After that first study session that deleted some of those measures, we did do the community workshop, as well as routed out the draft measures to the planning commissioners and those members of the sustainability plan that were still part of various commissions in town. We did ask for their feedback through that process. It is coming to the Planning Commission now after the 2 town council meetings and the public comment period in order to present to you what we have compiled based on all of that previous review.
So I'm sorry, Commissioner Sack, just if I could follow up, without revisiting an earlier conversation, what is our purview here? This is a big document. There's a lot in here, and we just got this on Friday, on top of 3 other inches of paper. And quite frankly, I don't know that I feel like I've gone through. We just went through the general plan update, and there's a lot of language in the general plan update about certain things we would and wouldn't do, and I haven't been able to cross-check all that with this sustainability plan. So. What is our purview, and then also what is the timeline? Is there something pressing that we can't push this out a little bit so we can spend a little more time with the document?
So in terms of your purview, because it's a policy, you do have, per town code, the responsibility, for lack of a better term, of providing some recommendation to the council on policies. Although you wouldn't necessarily be adopting the policy, the town code does provide you the opportunity to make recommendations on that policy. That's your purview. In terms of the amount of information that is included and your comfort level in making a recommendation, the direction from the general plan is to adopt it within 24 months of the adoption of the general plan, and also it must be in place prior to the adoption of a specific plan. So there's 2 timing components that come into play in terms of timing and the necessity to make a recommendation tonight or in the future. You do have the option of making a recommendation to town council to either not adopt it until the planning commission has further review. You can make a recommendation tonight or a motion to continue the matter to another planning commission date. you do have a couple of options. Those are the ones I can think off the top of my head.
So the option to continue would not critically impact that 24-month deadline?
It does in the sense that it wouldn't meet the requirement in the general plan. As Joanna mentioned, the greenhouse gas reduction plan, our sustainability plan, isn't a hard, fast requirement, but it does serve a purpose outside of the sustainability plan itself. It would be beneficial to make a recommendation tonight, but if staff could have a moment, there may be some scheduling that we can give you some answers on.
Thank you.
Sorry? Yep. Well, there's blah, blah, blah.
Thank you. In terms of timing, you could continue it to the August 22nd Planning Commission date, and then we would still be able to place it, if you felt comfortable with your recommendation on that date, maintain the hearing date for September 4th for Town Council.
Commissioner Sayak, you had a question.
I did, and not to belabor the process again, but perhaps I was fired from the Sustainability Committee and didn't know it, but I don't think I ever reviewed this. And so I'm wondering if the other members of the committee have had a chance to review it. And also, I completely concur with Commissioner Bourgeois' comments. It's very lengthy. And for a plan to be effective, one of the things that I've always been concerned about moving in this role is that the different plans that we implement do not conflict, if in anything, are cohesive with one another. And so serving on the general plan, I'd like to make sure that this doesn't in any way conflict, and that if there are ways that it supports it, also working on all the affordability, particularly since a lot of the reductions are in the land use area. I'd like to see if there are ways to that those areas can be synchronized. We're looking at how this will affect specific plans in the future. We have a huge potential development on the North 40. I'm just a little concerned that if we rush this, we may produce a document that is ineffective the minute it's approved. And so I would actually request some additional time to go through it to make sure that the other colleagues that have expressed interest in sustainability have also had a chance to review it, and that I just really have the time to really digest the information.
Commissioner O'Donnell, before I call on you, I'm just going to ask Commissioner Bourgeois, did you get a copy of it? You're on the Sustainability Committee?
If I did, I don't have any recollection of getting it. So,
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just wanted to find out again, is this all being framed by the September date for the council? In other words, the reason I'm asking that question is I'm leaving tomorrow for Turkey, and I return on the 22nd, probably at 7 o'clock in San Francisco. I don't mind, but so, you know, if you've got a bind, it hasn't been clarified. If you say, look, it's really important we get it to the town council by September, pick a date, and therefore the best I can do is the 22nd, that makes sense to me, but I don't know what your answer is.
It is ideal for us to keep it on the September 4th Town Council agenda, and the reason for that is the deadline established in the general plan.
Which is what?
Is 24 months from the adoption of the 2020 general plan. So that's September 2012.
So it could be at the end of September.
Staff doesn't have a specific date within the month of September, but it is our understanding that there is no room for the sustainability plan on the second meeting in September for Town Council.
Other questions or comments of staff? Before I ask the Commission for a motion, there's a gentleman that's been sitting in the audience, and it's 10 o'clock, and if you've made it all the way through this, if you wanted to speak to us, I want to give you that opportunity. Okay.
My name is Terry Mark, architect in town, and I found out about this on Thursday last week. Served on the board with the AIA for Sustainability, City of San Jose, a whole bunch of other cities. Finally was able to print out this thing on Monday, and so I'm in the same place that what I'm hearing tonight is that I've got 185 pages of document, and a lot of it refers to green building practices that aren't tested in the state and not tested locally. So I'm a little worried about some of the Cal Green discussion that's going on. I know there's been study sessions. I've heard about them tonight, but I was not aware of them. And actually, I took away and went to dinner and then came back.
So, Mr. Martin, is it fair to say that you would advocate a continuance of this matter to study it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Being told that staff needs to respond to you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't have a response. I wanted to respond to the comments from Commissioner
okay.
Sayak and
Thank you,
Bishop.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Earlier, just to say that, I was obviously also part of the team that prepared the general plan and very involved in that. And part of the reason why the town selected us to prepare the sustainability plan was to build on that knowledge and familiarity with the town and with the general plan. And we also worked on the housing element, and we have also been involved in the North 40 process. And so I just want to reassure you that this document was compiled with a knowledge of and a familiarity with those documents. I completely agree with you that anytime you're adding plans to the regulatory context in the town, you run the risk of creating internal conflicts or confusion. And I certainly support your goals of avoiding and minimizing those kind of conflicts. So that was also our goal. I certainly hope we have achieved that, but I wanted to reassure you that we definitely kept those issues in mind as we were formulating this and as we were reviewing it with the town council.
Are there any? Commissioner Erickson, yes, there are.
I would just suggest to the consultant and to the staff, it would be helpful to us. I trust that you did what you said. It would be helpful to us in the staff report to have given us a set of bullet parts that said how it got integrated and coordinated with the general plan and other kinds of plans, so that we wouldn't have to go through and pick that out piece by piece by piece. Would make a more robust staff report that would help us understand how those are integrated together.
Sure. I can comment on that generally if you want me to, or I can wait.
Well, let me wait to ask you to comment and see if there's a consensus of the Commission that we'd like to continue this matter so that we can study it further. And then, but I know that Commissioner O'Donnell doesn't, because he doesn't want to read it on the plane.
Well, let me just say this, that I understand the problem with the council. But in a sense, that is not our problem. I saw this document very, very recently. It's either a significant document or it's not. I am told it's a significant document. I don't think we're being given a reasonable time in which to look at it. Certainly the 22nd would be better than tonight. And it'll break my heart not to be able to go over this thing, but I probably won't read it in Turkey. I would love to get it longer than the 22nd. So we have to do what we have to do. But I mean, I don't know why it is our problem that we've been given no time. It's just that if it's going to happen, then it is our problem. I mean, in other words, if it's always going to go to the council on the first meeting in September, then we're between a rock and a hard place.
I think that you have a valid point. So I'm looking to commissioners for, I think I'll just close the public portion because we've had one public member and he's spoken to us. Thank you, Mr. Martin. And look to the commission for a motion. And I'm assuming that it's a motion to continue, and the question is to what date? Commissioner Sayak.
I just have a question. At what level of detail did the council go through the report? Again, trying to understand, I don't want to be redundant, so if they've actually gone through this report and have gone through and said, yes, we will, for example, I'm looking at page 628 on developing an ordinance against banning the use of two-stroke engine leaf blowers. So if the council have already said, yes, we will develop an ordinance by 2015, it seems like it would be a waste of our time to actually go through these if they've already said, yes, this is important to us, no, that's not. So I'd like a better sense of really, again, I guess it's the comment, what is our purview tonight? And what exactly are you looking for in terms of comments? I mean, I could provide several right now in terms of just formatting, in terms of, seems like with the plan there should be more specificity of who's responsible to do what, at what time. Is there any priority? Is the leaf blower ordinance more important than the lead residential ordinance? I'd like to get a better sense of how closely they looked at this document and whether they weighed the different measures and whether they've completely agreed that these are measures and ordinances that they will be supporting.
I can respond to that. I just want to kind of reiterate a little bit the background that Jennifer touched on, because we didn't go into a lot of detail about the kind of technical side of this process as part of my presentation yet. This, obviously, as you've seen, is a document that needs to be quantified to satisfy reviewers at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, for example. If anyone from the Attorney General's office wanted to review this, we need to be able to quantify the emissions that will be achieved from these measures and in total from the adoption of the plan itself. That modeling process is pretty complex, and it takes a lot of hours of work by consultants in the Planning Center DC&E and by traffic engineers to model VMT reductions, for example. And it's a significant investment of time and effort. So as Jennifer alluded to, before we undertook that work, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at a set of measures that would be acceptable to the town council, because they are the ones that are ultimately going to have to adopt this. So at our first study session, we kind of talked in general about the kind of sectors that we were going to be looking at, the types of measures that might be acceptable, the types of measures that are in place in other communities. And then at the second study session with them, we brought back information about what we had heard at the community workshop, along with a more defined set of draft measures that we had modeled and had information about the relative low-high cost effectiveness of and the emissions reductions that would be achieved by those measures. And we went through one by one those measures. I mean, I don't mean that they commented on every single measure, but we went through page by page, and they commented on those measures that they felt they wanted to give input on. As a result of that discussion, we deleted some measures entirely. We revised the language of other measures to either be more specific or in some cases to make measures that were mandatory voluntary. So from my point of view, we did have a relatively detailed review with the council. Certainly at the end of that second study session, it was my impression as the consultant that the town council was saying, with these changes, this is a set of measures that we feel that we would adopt. And given the level of detailed discussion that we had with them, it was certainly my impression that they were reading the measures, thinking about the measures, understanding what we were talking about and what they would be committing the town and town staff to doing. That was my impression.
I'm going to raise my hand and recognize myself. A follow-up on Commissioner Sayak's question. I went to actually one of the community sessions, and it was very broad and general, which I assume is different than the town council session. And I didn't understand from your answer whether it was a page-by-page review and the town council, for example, said, yes, we're going to do a leaf blower ordinance, which is quite controversial right now, so I'd be surprised if they did. There's also a plastic bag requirement in here, which is also controversial. For example, there's also a new solar homes partnership that requires residential projects of 6 units or more to participate in the California Energy Commission's new solar homes partnership. It requires it. So, okay, does that mean Swanson Ford needs to participate in this California Energy Commission new solar homes partnership? Has the town council said they have to do that? And the North 40 process is ongoing. So I have some difficulty in thinking that the town council said, yes, we're going to require, mixed use, whatever we are on North 40 in conjunction with this plan. So, I mean, are you saying that they went through this paragraph by paragraph and said, yeah, we're good to go?
Do you want to respond? That's fine. So one thing to note is that the town council did go through page by page a summary of the measures that included how they were cost effective, their relative cost effectiveness, and the implementation schedule. And they did make specific changes to the implementation schedule, specific measures, specifically relating to the North 40, knowing that some of the members are part of the North 40 specific plan review process. The other thing to note is that the measures contained within the sustainability plan, they're not, although they help us meet our goal of greenhouse gas reductions, they're not necessarily hard, concrete measures that you have to do or something bad happens. The plan is prepared in a way that it's anticipated that perhaps the town doesn't have the capacity to implement all of the measures. Perhaps with additional research, as the town looks at implementing the measures, they find that it's not appropriate for the town. So one thing to consider when you're deciding on whether the measures are appropriate, whether or not more review is needed, more detailed review is needed, this is not your last opportunity. If there's a policy change, it will come before the hearing bodies again. So just keep that, pardon me, in consideration that the measures themselves aren't cemented in stone. These are guidelines, they're goals for the town to help us reach our overarching goal of a greenhouse gas reduction target.
Other questions or comments? So my comment is, I guess that from my perspective, I wouldn't feel comfortable if in fact we're supposed to be reviewing this comprehensively and making recommendations to the town council, as opposed to just saying town council has said this is fine, which I'm still unclear on what we're supposed to be doing. If we're supposed to be actually doing a comprehensive, intelligent review, then my inclination would be to continue it. If all we're doing is stamping something that the town council has already approved, then there's no reason to continue it. And I'm still unclear on what we're supposed to be doing on that.
I have a comment on the continuance if you want me to discuss that one. Or
the continuance doesn't matter if we're not supposed to be doing a comprehensive review, I mean, at least to my thinking. So, but if you want to comment on a continuance, feel free.
We do respect your comprehensive review, so if you do have any input, we would want that.
Do you members of the commission feel like that? Well, Commissioner Bourgeois, you had your hand up.
Can I make a motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. With all due respect to Commissioner O'Donnell, maybe it's just because I'm jealous of his trip. I'm going to move that we continue this to the August 22nd meeting. regardless of whether, I mean, we're being asked to review it. I can't rubber stamp this. I really need to give it a more thorough review, regardless of what they do or don't want us to do. I feel like we should give it our best effort and actually spend some time with the document and give it an intelligent, thorough review. So I'm going to move to continue to the 22nd.
Okay, we have a motion to continue. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's seconded by Commissioner Sayoc. Does anyone want to make a comment or a question about the motion regarding the continuance? We know you're going to Turkey. Commissioner O'Donnell.
This may be premature, and the council can tell me, but I'm going to abstain simply because I am not trying to get out of this work. I certainly understand that 22nd, that's fine, but I don't want to vote for it because I do think this is a heavy piece of work that deserves attention. And I would love, notwithstanding my own limitations, to give it that attention. I won't be able to. So I'm just going to abstain, that's all.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue to August 22nd, made by Commissioner Bourgeois, seconded by Commissioner Sayoc. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Abstaining? Commissioner O'Donnell. So we've continued to August 22nd. Yes?
Out of sensitivity to Commissioner O'Donnell, staff will verify if the town council meeting date can be moved later than September 4th. And if yes, staff will request at the August 22nd meeting to continue it to the meeting of September 12th to allow more opportunity for the entire commission to review it and Mr. O'Donnell.
I appreciate what they're doing. So when do you think you might have an answer to that question?
We will check this week, and if we get an answer for you, we will email you.
It's not so much me. I just want my fellow
No, I meant the
commissioners
entire
to
commission.
understand what their timing would be.
Can we make the motion to continue to August 22nd somehow conditional so that we don't get to August 22nd then have to continue again if we already know in advance that it's going to be continued?
You would need to continue it, and we're going to have a meeting on August 22nd anyways. We have to continue it to a date certain. You can't continue it to...
Okay, but you would send us an email saying, okay, it's going to be continued, so we would know that we'd have the extra time prior to the August 22nd meeting?
That's our goal, is to find out this week.
Thank you. I think that finishes item number 4. And is there a report from our community services?
Yes, there is. At the last council meeting, which was Monday night, council reviewed 424 North Santa Cruz Avenue. That was the conditional use permit for a wine bar in the Zanardi Center. They did approve that application. They also reviewed 160 West Main Street, that's the old Valeriano's restaurant, to modify that use permit. They did approve that application with the Planning Commission's recommendation of not permitting the live entertainment. And then I have an item to inform you about that on August 20th, the Town Council will be discussing the reuse of the old library space. And the uses that are being contemplated under that concept plan include space for the Friends of the Library bookstore, museums of Los Gatos, and that would be for exhibits, workshops, and storage area. And the museum at the, which is located West Main and Tate, that's the museum that will be proposed located to the library. And the rest of the space will be proposed for town staff and related uses. A conditional use permit will be required for this use, and the museum's goal is to be able to relocate by January. So most likely in the next few months, we'll be seeing a conditional use application regarding the reuse of the library.
Commissioner Sayoc.
Just a quick question on the Valeriano's application. Did they approve it in its entirety in how we recommended it, or were there any changes specifically to the hours? Because we kept it within the alcohol.
It was directly your recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
And Planning Commission would be, the video is available online, and there were comments about the Planning Commission decision and process, and you may wish to review that for clarification.
and several of the council members did refer to the thoughtfulness and input and recommendation from Planning Commission.
Any commission matters? We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.